I woke up on a stranger's bed, head spinning from cheap liquor, and realized something impossible. I'd been reborn. Gone back in time to the worst day of my old life. It was the middle of summer in Stone Creek Village, hot enough to fry eggs on the dirt road. I recognized everything. The crumbling mud house, the stale air, the trap that old couple Zhao Gui and his wife had set for me. In my previous life, those two scheming bastards got me drunk on purpose, stripped my clothes off, and threw me onto their daughter-in-law Wang Naishang's bed. Then they ran out screaming to the whole village that I'd forced myself on her. Their plan was simple: blackmail my family into handing over our new house to pay for their son's gambling debts. If we refused, they'd call the police. And who would believe me? I was the village troublemaker, a good-for-nothing nobody respected. Last time around, Naishang spoke up for me and proved nothing happened. She saved me from prison. But it ruined her. She'd wrecked her in-laws' scheme, so they beat her every single day after that. The whole village whispered about her behind her back. A month later, she couldn't take it anymore and threw herself into the river. The night before she died, she came to find me. She begged me to run away with her. I was too much of a coward to say yes. She gave herself to me that night anyway. The last thing she whispered against my ear was, "Next life, take me with you." I carried those words for the rest of my days. But now there was no next life. I was back, right here, right now. And this time, I wasn't going to be a coward. I looked over at Naishang lying on the bed beside me. She was maybe 23, 24, beautiful in a way that made your chest ache. Those sad, bright eyes, that delicate figure. The old couple had already messed up her clothes to make it look like something terrible had happened. She was drunk too, barely conscious. She mumbled my name and asked me to hold her, then passed out again. I pulled her clothes back into order, careful and quick. My hands were shaking, not from the drink, but from knowing what was coming. Outside the front door, I could hear Zhao Gui and his wife bringing the villagers, a whole crowd of them, buzzing with gossip and ready for a show. The old man was already crying crocodile tears, wailing about how my family had wronged them. But I wasn't the same fool as before. In my past life, after everything fell apart, I'd left the village and found a Taoist master who taught me medicine, martial arts, and hunting. My body was young again, but the skills were still in my head. I jumped the wall and was gone before they even got the door open. When Zhao Gui burst into the room with half the village behind him, all they found was Naishang lying on the bed, fully dressed, perfectly fine. No sign of me anywhere. The look on that old crook's face must have been priceless. This life, I had plans for him. And I wasn't going to let Naishang suffer alone, not again. I slipped out over the wall and circled back around to the front of the house, calm as anything. By the time Zhao Gui and his wife brought the whole crowd of villagers inside to catch me, I was already gone from that room. Inside, it was chaos. Zhao Gui's wife threw a basin of water on Naishang's face to wake her up. Poor woman opened her eyes to a room full of staring neighbors and her father-in-law screaming in her face, calling her a slut, demanding to know where I was. She had no idea what was going on. She'd been drunk the whole time and never even knew I'd been put on her bed. The villagers started turning on Zhao Gui. The blacksmith Li Taijiang spoke up first, said I might have a bad reputation, but I'd never messed with anyone's woman. Others chimed in too. No proof, no crime. Naishang's clothes were fine, she was fine, and I wasn't even in the house. What rape? Zhao Gui's face went from red to white. His whole scheme was falling apart in front of everyone. That's when I strolled up behind the crowd, casual as can be. "What's all the fuss about?" I said. Zhao Gui's eyes lit up when he saw me. He pointed his finger and started yelling that I'd attacked his daughter-in-law. I just laughed, told him I'd never even been to his house today. The smell of alcohol on me. I'd been drinking at home this morning, already sobered up. If I'd just been drinking with him, how could I be talking so clearly? I even offered to walk a straight line to prove it. He had nothing. No evidence, no witness, nothing. Then Li Hu, the village bully, the one Zhao Gui's son owed gambling money to, figured out what was really going on. He slammed a debt note down in front of everyone. "Pay up today, or you know what happens to your son." Zhao Gui crumbled, dropped to his knees, begging, crying about how his son was his only boy left. Please don't cut off his hand. That's when it clicked for everyone watching. I said it out loud so the whole room could hear. "So that's what this is. Your son owes Li Hu money, and your plan was to frame me for rape, then blackmail my family to pay off his debt. You evil old bastard. Then I rushed him, slapped him across the face over and over, kicked him right between the legs. He was drunk and old, couldn't fight back at all. I knew exactly where to hit thanks to everything I'd learned from my master in my past life. Every strike landed where it hurt most, but left the least visible marks. The villagers eventually pulled me off him, but I could tell they'd taken their sweet time about it. Nobody felt sorry for Zhao Gui. After I stepped back, the whole village was whispering. They finally understood what kind of people the Zhao couple really were. Naixiang had come to their family as a virgin bride, became a widow on her wedding day when their eldest son died, spent 3 years in mourning. And this was how they repaid her? Using her body as bait to settle their other son's gambling debts? Then Li Hu turned his greedy eyes on Naixiang. She was sitting on the bed, soaking wet from the water they'd thrown on her, looking small and pitiful. Li Hu grinned and made his offer to Zhao Gui. Marry your daughter-in-law off to me, and the debt disappears. I clenched my fists. This was exactly how it had played out in my last life. But this time, I wasn't going to just stand there and watch. Zhao Gui's eyes actually lit up when Li Hu offered to cancel the debt in exchange for Naixiang, his own daughter-in-law, and he was ready to trade her like livestock. The old bastard didn't even hesitate. Naixiang refused. She knew Li Hu had diseases, that he was ugly and violent. But Zhao Gui didn't care. He started lecturing her about how the family had paid bride price for her, how she belonged to them now, how she had to obey. His wife piled on too, crying about how their son Zhao Chong would lose his hand if Naixiang didn't agree. Called her selfish for not wanting to sacrifice herself. I stepped forward and shut them up, told them this was the new society. Marriage was free choice now. Naixiang's future was her own decision, not theirs. I reminded them that the government cadres were always preaching about marriage freedom, and anyone who forced a woman into marriage would be made an example of as a backward element. That word, backward element, hit them like a slap. They weren't afraid of me, but they were afraid of the government. Then Naixiang grabbed a pair of scissors from somewhere and pressed the blade against her own throat. Blood was already trickling down her white skin. She said if they forced her to marry Li Hu, she'd die right here. The whole room went silent. Villagers started yelling at Zhao Gui, telling him he was committing a sin. They warned Li Hu too. If this woman died because of forced marriage, he could forget about ever becoming militia captain. That's when I saw my opening. I coughed twice and pushed to the front. I can solve this debt problem, I said. Everyone stared at me like I'd lost my mind. The village good for nothing. Solving a 36 yuan debt? That was a fortune. Pork was only 4 mao a jin. Sweet potatoes 8 fun. Zhao Gui's entire rundown house was only worth about 30 yuan. But I had a plan. See, I knew something nobody else did. Decades from now, when they'd tear down this neighborhood to build new buildings, workers would discover an underground palace beneath Zhao Gui's courtyard. 9 large rooms, 4 of them naturally below, freezing year-round, the others cool and dry. A natural cold storage chamber, created by an underground cave system. If I could get my hands on this property and dig down to that palace, I'd have the perfect place to store meat and food. This was 1957. The communes were coming. I remembered that much from my previous life. Within a year, everything would be collectivized, everyone eating from the same big pot. But if I had a secret underground storehouse full of game meat, I could feed myself and the people I cared about through the hard times ahead. So I made Li Hu an offer. I'd borrow 36 yuan from him right now, pay back 40 within a month, and put up my family's brand new house as collateral. The villagers tried to talk me out of it. That house was supposed to be for my future bride, they said. My father would break my legs. But I knew something they didn't. That house was never meant for me anyway. My grandfather ran our family like a tyrant, and he'd already secretly decided to give it to my cousin, my uncle's son. The old man played favorites and had been bleeding my father dry for years to feed the other branches of the family. So why not use that house for my own purposes? Li Hu agreed eagerly. He'd seen the house. It was well built, good location, good feng shui, worth at least 40 yuan. We drew up a contract right there. The moment I had those 36 yuan in my hand, I turned to Zhao Gui and slapped the whole stack of bills down in front of him. I'm buying your house, I said. 36 yuan. Deal? Zhao Gui snatched that money so fast his hands were shaking. I made him sign a receipt. Once the house transfer went through at the township office, the receipt would be void. He agreed to everything without a second thought. His son's hand mattered more than any house. I told him he had 5 days to pack up and get out. Then we headed to the township office together to start the paperwork. He had to grab his documents from home first, and the office was a fair distance away, so by the time we'd get back it would nearly be dark. But the process went smoothly. The certificate would be ready in 3 days. While we were gone, news spread through Stone Creek Village like wildfire. The village good-for-nothing had put up his family's brand-new house as collateral to borrow 36 yuan, then used it to buy Zhao Gui's crumbling shack. Everyone thought I'd lost my mind. The news reached my grandfather, Li Laoduan. The old man nearly had a stroke. That new house was never meant for me. He'd been planning to give it to my cousin, my uncle's son. My father and I had done most of the building, but grandfather controlled everything in our family. He'd been sucking my parents dry for years to favor his other sons. So when he heard I'd used his house as collateral, he went storming home cursing my name. But I'd already taken the household registration book and left. Too late, old man. Walking back to the village, I felt good. Really good. That underground palace beneath Zhao Gui's yard was going to change everything. I just needed to dig down to it, and I'd have a natural cold storage. Rooms that stayed below freezing year-round, others that stayed cool and dry. Perfect for preserving meat. The communes were coming. Within a year, everyone would be eating from the same communal pot, and the food would be terrible. But if I spent the next months hunting in the mountains and stockpiling meat underground, I could live well through the hard years ahead. I imagined it. The whole village shivering and chewing bark, while I was roasting pork and sharing hot pot with a couple of pretty widows. Not a bad life at all. The mountains behind our village were full of game. A wild chicken sold for over 4 mao, a rabbit for 4 mao. A small wild boar could bring in 50 or 60 yuan. And if I got really lucky, a sable skin was worth over 200 yuan, enough to trade for foreign currency. I needed weapons, though. A gun would be best, or at least a bow, a knife, some rope. I'd figure it out by morning. Qingshan, a woman's voice came from behind a haystack. It was Naixiang. She'd changed out of her wet clothes into an old outfit from her teenage years, too small now, hugging every curve. Those sad, beautiful eyes looked up at me, and I felt my heart clench. She thanked me for saving her from Li Hu. I told her straight. She was alone in this village with no one to rely on, and her in-laws would only treat her worse after today. If she ever needed help, she should come to me. I meant every word. She teared up. For a woman who'd spent 3 years being blamed for her husband's death, being told she was cursed, doing all the housework while eating the worst scraps, hearing someone say, "I'll protect you," meant more than I could understand. She'd been like a leaf floating on a river with no roots, no shore to reach. But then she got worried about me. The 36 yuan I'd borrowed. How would I ever pay it back? She knew my family's situation. That house was supposed to be for my future wife. She felt guilty, knowing I'd only gotten into this mess because of her. When I told her I planned to go hunting in the mountains tomorrow, she panicked. She started listing off everyone who died in those forests over the years. A dozen at least from our village alone. She mentioned Zhao Zhanshan, a famous hunter who'd once saved my life, now bedridden after a wild boar attack. She reminded me I had no experience, no hunting captain to guide me. What about my parents? My sister-in-law? Who would take care of them if something happened to me? Then she said something that nearly broke my heart. Forget it, Qingshan. I'll just marry Li Hu. I'm a widow anyway. I need a man sooner or later. Besides, they say I'm cursed. Maybe I'll curse him to death too. She said it with a bitter little smile, like her own life was worth nothing. Don't talk nonsense, I told Naixiang. I'm going into the forest to hunt, not to die. And it's not just about paying back the money. My family needs income. I actually like hunting. So stop talking about marrying Li Hu. If you do that, everything I did today was for nothing. She sighed, knowing she couldn't change my mind. Then she pulled a boiled egg from inside her shirt, still warm from her body heat. She held it out to me. Eat this. You'll need the nutrition if you're going into the mountains. In this era, eggs were precious. Regular families only ate them on holidays or when someone was sick. Naixiang's position in that household was the lowest. She probably never got to eat one herself. And every egg in a rural home was counted. When her in-laws noticed one missing, she'd get beaten for sure. I took the egg, and when our fingers touched, she pulled her hand back fast, her cheeks turning red. I bit the egg in half and held the other piece up to her mouth. She tried to refuse, said eggs were for men, not women. I told her if she wouldn't even accept half an egg from me, how would she ever come to me when she was in real trouble? She opened her mouth, and I popped it in. She chewed slowly, and I could see something warm spread through her eyes. Maybe it was the first kind thing anyone had done for her in 3 years. She hurried off to cook dinner for her in-laws before they started yelling. When I got home, the atmosphere was ice cold. Our family compound held 4 households under one roof, all controlled by my grandfather, Lee Loudwin. He sat at the head of the dinner table with the best food. Next to him sat my eldest uncle's family and their golden boy, my cousin Li Qing-shu, the old man's favorite grandson, the one who'd gotten the family's resources to attend school, even though his grades were dead last. After them came my second uncle's family, and at the very end, the worst seats with the worst food, my parents and my widowed sister-in-law. My older brother had run away years ago. Some said he died out there somewhere. Every pair of eyes turned to me when I walked in. My grandfather and eldest uncle looked ready to murder me. My parents and sister-in-law looked terrified. "You little wolf cub, don't you dare sit down," my grandfather roared. My father jumped up immediately. "Father, Qing Shan is young. He doesn't understand. Punish me instead." My eldest uncle slammed his hand on the table. "Young? He's 18. Old enough to know better. Today he mortgages a house. Tomorrow he'll be killing and burning. Father, we can't let this delinquent ruin our family's reputation. It could hurt Qing-shu's future career." That did it. The moment grandfather heard his precious Qing-shu might be affected, he was waving his tobacco pipe at me like a weapon. "Stand up." Now, I stood. But not because I was afraid. "Did you really mortgage our new house to borrow 36 yuan from Li Hu?" the old man demanded. "So what if I did?" I said, walking toward him. "How dare you? That house is for Qing-shu, not you. Go get that debt note back right now." The room went dead silent. My father's face turned white. "Father, you said that house was for Qing-shan. I built it with my own hands, brick by brick, during every break and every afternoon while everyone else napped. How can you give it to Qing-shu? When did I ever say it was for Qing-shan?" Grandfather shot back without a hint of shame. He held up 4 fingers. "First, I never explicitly promised that house to your son. Second, the land deed is in my name. Third, I'm the head of this family, and what I say goes. Fourth, Qing-shu is the eldest grandson. He marries first, so the house goes to him. We'll build Qing-shan something later." My father opened his mouth, then closed it. Years of being the least favored son had beaten all the fight out of him. He couldn't even see how badly he was being manipulated. I suppose that makes sense," he mumbled. I watched him cave, and something hardened inside me. In my last life, this spinelessness had dragged our whole family down. This time, things were going to be different. The house deal went through without a hitch. Zhao Gui signed everything I put in front of him. He just wanted to save his son's hand. I gave him 5 days to move out, and we went straight to the township office for the paperwork. 3 days, and the deed would be mine. Back in the village, everyone was calling me crazy. The local deadbeat had just traded a brand new house for a rotting shack. Nobody knew what I really wanted was what lay underneath that yard. A hidden underground palace with rooms that stayed freezing cold all year long. A natural ice house carved out by caves deep in the earth. In a year, the communes would come, and everyone would be starving on watery porridge. But I'd have a secret vault packed with smoked meat and game. That was my real plan. My grandfather found out about the mortgage and nearly choked on his own rage. The new house was never mine to begin with. The old tyrant had been planning to hand it to my cousin all along, even though my father and I built it with our own sweat. But I'd already grabbed the household book and left before he could stop me. Let him scream. On my way home, Naishang found me behind a haystack. She'd changed into an old outfit too small for her now, clinging tight to her body. She thanked me with tears in her eyes. 3 years of being called a cursed wife, doing every chore, eating scraps, and today was the first time anyone had stood up for her. I told her to come to me whenever she needed help. I meant it with everything I had. Then she got scared for me. She knew the mountains had killed a dozen men from our village. She listed the hunters who'd been mauled, crippled, or buried up there. She begged me not to go. When I wouldn't budge, she said the thing that cut deepest, "Just forget it. I'll marry Li Hu. I'm a widow with a death curse. Maybe I'll kill him too." She smiled when she said it, The kind of smile that makes you want to punch a wall. Like she'd already decided her life wasn't worth fighting for. I told her to stop talking nonsense. I wasn't going up there to die. I was going to build something better for all of us. And if she married Li Hu after everything I'd done today, then what was the point of any of it? She sighed and pulled a warm boiled egg from her shirt. Still had her body heat on it. She pressed it into my hand and told me to eat. I'd need the strength for hunting. In those days, an egg was a luxury. Her in-laws counted every single one. She'd get beaten when they noticed it missing, and she knew it. I bit the egg in half and held the other piece to her lips. She tried to refuse. I told her if she couldn't even take half an egg from me, she'd never come to me when things got bad. She opened her mouth and let me feed it to her. I watched her chew slowly, and something soft passed across her face, like warmth she hadn't felt in years. Then she turned red, mumbled about needing to cook dinner, and ran off. When I walked through my family's gate, the storm was waiting. Grandfather sat at the head of the table with murder in his eyes. My eldest uncle's family flanked him like loyal dogs. My parents and widowed sister-in-law sat at the far end with the worst food, looking terrified. The old man didn't waste a second. He screamed at me to stand up, demanded I get the mortgage note back. Then the truth finally came spilling out. The house was for my cousin Qing Shu, the eldest grandson, the family's golden boy who couldn't pass a single exam, but still got everything handed to him. My father had built that house with his own hands during every lunch break and afternoon nap for 2 years, and grandfather had been lying the whole time about who it was for. My father tried to protest, but my uncle slammed the table and shut him down. Then grandfather laid out his 4 reasons why the house belonged to Qing Shu, each one more shameless than the last. My father, beaten down by a lifetime of being the least loved son, folded like wet paper. I suppose that makes sense, he whispered. I watched him surrender, and something inside me went cold and hard. In my last life, his weakness had cost our whole family everything. Not this time. This time I was done playing by the old man's rules. My sister-in-law Guixiang was waiting for me at dawn. She had a hunting bow slung over her shoulder. "You're going hunting with no weapon?" she said. "I went back to my parents' house and got my father's bow for you." She handed it over, and I felt the weight of it. A proper hunting bow, worth 8 or 9 yuan at least. That was a fortune. You could buy 20 wild chickens for that kind of money. The bride price my family paid for her wedding wasn't even 10 yuan. I noticed something missing from her wrist. Her silver bracelet, the one piece of jewelry she'd brought as her dowry. It was there yesterday. Now it was gone. She'd traded her dowry for this bow. For me. Her brother Daju was waiting outside. He pulled me aside before leaving and told me the truth. Guixiang had knelt outside her parents' door for half the night before their father finally softened and let her take the bow. Daju's face was hard with anger. He warned me. If the Li family kept mistreating his little sister, he'd come take her back himself and make us all pay. After he left, I went to Guixiang's room. I noticed she was walking funny when she came in earlier, and now I understood why. The old woman, grandmother, had refused to let her make new shoes, giving her a pair of my eldest aunt's old ones instead. They were too small, and the long walk to her parents' house had rubbed her feet raw and bloody. Meanwhile, eldest aunt was wearing brand new shoes. I grabbed the best pair of shoes I owned and knelt down in front of her. She tried to pull away when I took her ankle, but I told her to hold still. I'd seen what her brother told me. I knew what she'd sacrificed. The least I could do was change her shoes. Her feet were pale white and delicate, with raw red patches where the skin had been worn away. It hurt just to look at. She'd never had a man kneel down to put shoes on her before. In this world, it was always women serving men. I could feel her breathing quicken, but I just focused on getting the shoes on without hurting her worse. "Wait for me to come home," I told her. "When I sell what I catch, the first thing I'm buying is a proper pair of shoes for you." Then I grabbed my bag of roasted cornmeal and headed for the edge of the village, straight to old Zhao Zhanshan's house. Zhao Zhanshan had been a hunter in these mountains for decades. He'd saved my life once when I was younger. A wild boar had gored him recently, punctured his lungs, and now he was bedridden, coughing like his chest was tearing apart. His wife had died years ago. His son had been killed on the mountain. Some animal had torn the skin right off his face. All he had left was his daughter, Zhao Shanqing. She was my age, 18. Because they lived at the far edge of the village and her father was a hunter, she didn't mix much with other kids growing up. Her mother died early, so nobody taught her to keep clean. She always had dirt on her face and wore ragged clothes, and the village children wouldn't play with her. I was about the only one who ever bothered with her, even if it was mostly just teasing. But I knew something the rest of the village didn't. In a few years, Zhao Shanxing would grow into the most beautiful girl for 10 villages in every direction. The golden flower of Stone Creek Village. She just hadn't bloomed yet. I knocked on the door and called out for her father. From inside came the sound of terrible coughing, and then a girl's clear voice answering. "Who's there?" Zhao Zhanshan's daughter Shanxing opened the door. She was a real beauty hiding under all that dirt. Perfect features, slim figure. Give her a few years, and she'd be the prettiest girl in 10 villages. She just didn't know it yet. My father had already visited the night before to let them know I was coming. Shanxing led me inside, and the smell of herbal medicine hit me like a wall. Old Zhao Zhanshan was propped up in bed, looking weak and hollow. He patted the chair beside him, and I sat down. When I asked about his injuries, he just sighed and said he'd never climb the mountain again. The wild boar had damaged his heart and lungs. He was lucky to be alive at all. Another hunter had stumbled across him just in time. He tried to talk me out of going, but when he saw I wouldn't budge, he started teaching me everything he knew. Decades of mountain wisdom poured out of him. Which days never to hunt, how to set traps, which animals to target, how to read the forest. He talked until sunrise, until he couldn't stop coughing and his daughter came in scolding him for straining himself. Before I left, he grabbed my wrist and said something I'd never forget. The most dangerous thing on that mountain isn't the wild boars or the bears. It's other people. Always watch out for other hunters. Then Shanxing pulled me outside. She told me her father's hunting rifle had gone missing after his injury, and they'd sold almost everything else to pay for medicine. But there was one thing her father had refused to sell no matter what: his hunting dog. "Take him with you," she said. I could barely believe it. This dog, Big Yellow, was a tracker, what hunters called a low-nose. He could follow an animal's scent trail along the ground, a skill that took years to train. A dog like this was a hunter's most prized partner. I'd held this dog as a puppy, and he knew me well enough. When Shanxing told him to go with me, he trotted over and rubbed against my ankle. Having Big Yellow changed everything. Hunting alone with just a bow was practically suicide. With a trained tracker at my side, my odds went way up. Just as I was about to leave, a young man came running up the path, maybe 4 or 5 years older than me. His name was Zhao Kuan, and he was holding something bloody in his hands. "Shanxing, your father can be saved," he shouted, panting. A 500-gene wild boar's heart, freshly killed, less than 2 days old. He shoved the dripping organ towards Shanxing with a grin he couldn't contain. Here's the story. The doctor who examined Zhanshan had said his damaged heart could be healed with a special medicine, but it needed one rare ingredient as a catalyst: the heart of a wild boar weighing at least 500 gene, killed within 3 days. A boar that size was a monster. They only lived deep in the old forest where it was most dangerous. Even skilled hunters rarely brought one down. Shanxing had no money left, so she'd put out a promise to every hunter in the area. Whoever brought her a fresh heart from a 500-gene boar, she'd sleep with them for a month. It had been over a month with no takers. Zhao Kuan was the first. "So tonight," Zhao Kuan said, rubbing his hands together, barely hiding his excitement. "Your place or mine?" Shanxing nodded and reached for the heart. She'd made the deal, and she'd honor it. Her father's life mattered more than her virginity. But I'd been studying that heart the whole time. Something was off. I'd learned plenty about animal anatomy from my old Taoist master. I knew what a 500-gene boar's heart should look like, and this wasn't it. "Hold on," I said. "That's a 300-gene boar's heart at best. Someone injected it with water to make it look bigger. It's a cheap trick." Zhao Kuan's face went white when I mentioned the meat yellow tendrils. Any wild boar heart over 500 gene would have 2 or 3 golden thread-like lines on the surface, called meat yellow vine in old medical texts. That's what made it useful as a medicine catalyst. Without those lines, it was just an ordinary pig heart. And his had none. He tried to bluff, told me I was just a village deadbeat who'd never been hunting. But when Shanxing said she'd go verify with the doctor, Zhao Kuan panicked. He snatched the heart back and stormed off, muttering about feeding it to the dogs. That told everyone everything they needed to know. If it were real, why run? His plan had been simple and rotten. Trick Shanxing into bed for a month, get her pregnant, Then she'd have no choice but to marry him. I'd ruined that for him, and I knew he'd hold a grudge. His family were hunters too. I'd need to watch my back on the mountain. Shanxing thanked me quietly. I told her it was nothing. Her father had saved my life once. She asked how I knew about the meat yellow vine. I told her my master taught me, an old man who lived on the mountain but had left some time ago. She looked curious but didn't push it. I had 2 ways to save old John Shan. First, actually hunt down a 500-gene boar and get a real heart with the tendrils. Second, once I cultivated my pure yang energy through the Taoist body-strengthening techniques, I could use golden needle acupuncture to keep him alive. But to fully heal internal damage this severe, I'd need to place 8 needles, and in my previous life, I'd only mastered 6. Either way, I needed lots of meat to fuel my body's training. The mountain was calling. I touched the jade gourd pendant hanging against my chest. It had come back through time with me, the sect master's token from my old Taoist teacher's order. Whatever sect it was, the old man never told me. Probably just him left in it anyway. I hoped the thing would bring me luck. Mountain brother, a booming voice behind me. I turned to see a giant of a man sprinting toward me. Li Dazhuang, nearly 2 meters tall, built like a wall, carrying a red-tasseled spear. My childhood best friend. His parents were both short, which made his father forever suspicious that his mother had cheated. Poor Dazhuang. He'd overheard my plans yesterday while lurking outside my house, and had come prepared. He'd even stolen a chunk of cured meat from his family's supplies. His parents had no idea he was here. I looked at the spear, the stolen meat, and his big, stupid grin. I didn't need a partner up there. Fine, I said. I always knew you had exceptional bones. You're in. Let's go. The old forest was brutal. Steep, tangled, no paths. We had to hack our way through with machetes. The canopy was so thick the sun barely reached the ground, and the humidity made every breath feel like sucking steam. We walked all day, maybe 10 kilometers, which was nothing for a forest this vast. Around 5 in the afternoon, we found a good spot by a small stream. Animals would come here to drink. That was our hunting ground. I split the cured meat in half with my knife, and we ate it with cold cornmeal paste mixed with stream water. After a full day of hiking, that smoky meat tasted like the best meal I'd ever had. Big Yellow got his share too. After eating, the temperature dropped and the forest came alive. Rabbits liked to feed at night. Pheasants and roe deer came out at dawn and dusk. Everything needed water eventually. Sitting by this stream, we'd see plenty of game. I sent Dazhuang to cut straight branches for our overnight camp, telling him not to go far and to tie his red tassel cloth as a marker. Then I took my bow and followed the stream downstream with Big Yellow, scanning the banks. My bow pulled about 60 pounds, enough to kill small game at 50 meters, medium animals like deer within 30. For wild boar, I'd need to be within 20 meters and hit the heart or neck. Anything bigger than a juvenile boar, and this bow simply wouldn't punch through the hide. The jade gourd against my chest suddenly grew warm. Before I could react, Big Yellow exploded forward like a yellow streak of lightning, launching himself at a rabbit drinking at the water's edge. Big Yellow was fast. The rabbit bolted, but rabbits don't have endurance. They burn out quick. Before Big Yellow could close the gap, though, I'd already drawn my bow. Feet planted shoulder width and a half apart. Wind about 3 meters per second. Target 30 meters out. I adjusted for the rabbit's movement and let the arrow fly. It punched clean through the rabbit's neck. The thing tumbled and twitched on the ground. Big Yellow scooped it up in his jaws and dropped it at my feet, wagging his tail proudly. For Jean, maybe a little more. Small rabbit. I gutted it fast and buried the blood. In summer heat, a carcass bloats within 2 hours, and the smell of blood travels a full kilometer in 6 minutes. You don't want to attract the wrong kind of attention. Then something strange happened. The jade gourd pendant against my chest went warm again, just like it had right before Big Yellow spotted the first rabbit. I looked around carefully, and sure enough, 40 meters downstream, a fatter rabbit was munching grass by the water's edge. I drew, aimed, released. Another clean shot through the neck. 2 rabbits in 10 minutes. I was starting to wonder about this pendant. Was it some kind of luck charm? Every time it heated up, game appeared. The old Taoist had said the founding master of his sect used this very pendant to establish the whole order. Maybe there was more to it than just a token. 5 minutes later, Big Yellow caught a third rabbit on his own, spotted it, pounced, bit its throat before I even reacted. He came trotting back with the thing dangling from his mouth, tail going like crazy. I scratched his head and promised him I'd find him a nice lady dog when we got home. Back at camp, Dazhuang had chopped enough wood to build a whole house. When he saw me walk and carrying 3 rabbits, his eyes went wide as dinner plates. He couldn't believe it. Less than an hour in the forest, and I'd already bagged 3. Even experienced hunters sometimes came home empty after a full day. "How'd you do that?" he sputtered. "Lucky," I said. "Now dig a pit. We're roasting all 3 tonight." Guts go to Big Yellow. While Dazhuang handled the rabbits, I got to work building a shelter, what hunters called a tangzi house. I'd built plenty in my previous life. You dig a foundation, line the edges with trimmed branches stood upright, bind them tight with vines, and raise the floor off the ground to keep out moisture and bugs. This one was small, only about 5 square meters, just enough for 2 men to sleep. Tomorrow I'd build a bigger one nearby and use this small one for storing meat. By the time we finished, it was past 6 and the forest had gone dark. The old forest at night was pure horror. Strange animal cries echoed from every direction, sounding like ghosts wailing. You never knew what might come charging out of the blackness. But we had a fire going, a solid shelter, and 3 fat rabbits sizzling over the flames. Dazhuang stared at the shelter with his mouth hanging open. He said even the veteran hunters in our village couldn't build something this sturdy. He was looking at me now like I was some kind of mountain god. "Tomorrow we build a bigger one," I told him. "For now, let's eat." "Wait, all 3 rabbits?" "We're eating all 3 tonight. Every last one." His face split into the biggest grin I'd ever seen. Out here in the old forest, with a fire crackling, meat roasting, and Big Yellow gnawing happily on rabbit guts beside us. This was the life I'd come back to build. We roasted all 3 rabbits that night by the fire. Dazhuang couldn't believe we were eating everything. Hunters normally save their kills to sell at market. But summer heat would spoil the meat by morning, and besides, I needed the fuel. After eating my share, I got up and started practicing my body-strengthening fist techniques. Dazhuang watched with his mouth hanging open. "When did you learn martial arts?" "You're better than my grandfather, and he was a Shaolin monk." I asked if he wanted to learn. He waved me off and flopped down to rest. I kept at it. Eat meat, practice forms, eat more meat, practice again. The technique burned through energy like a furnace. That was the whole point. The more meat I consumed while training, the faster I developed pure yang energy. I needed that energy to save Zhao Zhanshan's life with golden needle acupuncture, and for plenty of other things besides. I finally crawled into the shelter around 10 at night with Big Yellow beside me. The fire outside would keep predators away. At 2 in the morning, I was wide awake. 4 hours of sleep, and I felt completely refreshed, another benefit of the body training. I shook Dazhuang up and sent him to chop more branches while I ran through my forms again, feeling for any trace of pure yang energy stirring inside me. Not yet, but close. The hunger was already coming back. Before dawn, we packed up and headed out along the stream. Dazhuang was chattering about how great it would be if we could catch 3 more rabbits like yesterday. 3 rabbits? I said. "Today I'm getting you a roe deer." He laughed it off, saying we shouldn't get our hopes up on only our 2nd day. Then the jade pendant went warm against my chest. I slowed my steps instantly and held up a hand. Dazhuang froze. I pointed ahead. There by the water, nibbling on fresh grass, sat the fattest rabbit I'd ever seen. Close to 6 Gene, a real monster. I drew the bow, aimed at 40 meters, and released. The arrow buried itself through the rabbit's neck, pinning it to the ground. Big Yellow shot forward, snatched it up, and trotted back with his tail whipping side to side. He knew the drill now. Bring back the kill, get rewarded with the guts. Dazhuang's jaw was somewhere around his knees. "Did you even aim?" "You didn't even aim." I showed him how to gut and clean the rabbit properly. From now on, that was his job, processing carcasses and hauling the meat. He pounded his chest and swore he'd do whatever I told him, even if I ordered him to go punch a bear. The pendant, the bow, the dog, a loyal partner built like a mountain. Things were coming together. Out here in the old forest, I was starting to feel like the hunter I'd been in my past life. Only this time, I was getting an earlier start, and I had a plan. I taught Dazhuang how to properly gut and clean a rabbit, then we kept moving along the stream. 10 minutes later, the pendant warmed up again. Another rabbit, munching grass by the water. I dropped it with 1 arrow at 40 meters. More rabbits? Dazhuang groaned. Is that all this forest has? I told him to quit complaining. One rabbit was worth over 4 mao. 10 a day meant 4 yuan, enough to buy 40 jin of rice. Dazhuang's eyes glazed over. He admitted he'd never actually eaten rice in his life, only rice porridge. We'd both grown up on nothing but coarse grain. We kept going. Big Yellow picked up a scent and bolted ahead, leading us to 2 rabbits hiding in a thicket. Dazhuang said it was a shame we could only get one before the other ran. I drew my bow and fired 2 arrows at once. Both hit. Both neck shots. Both rabbits pinned to the ground. Dazhuang looked at me like I'd just pulled the sun out of the sky. Before he could even speak, a pheasant burst out of the bushes, startled by the commotion. It was already airborne and flying away. I drew again and shot it out of the sky. Dazhuang went completely numb. He just stood there staring. By 7 in the morning, we headed back to camp. Not because we'd run out of time, but because Dazhuang's body was literally covered in hanging game and he couldn't carry any more. The morning count: 11 rabbits, 5 pheasants, and 1 palm civet. Dazhuang was practically crying with excitement. But when I said we weren't going home yet, his face fell. I told him all this meat together was barely 100 jin. Half of it would get eaten on the walk home anyway. We needed more. He started getting stingy, saying he'd rather eat cornmeal and save the meat to sell. A man who's been poor his whole life can't bring himself to eat money. I told him to suit himself. I needed the fuel. I had 3 rabbits roasted and ate 2 of them after my nap, then started practicing my fist techniques again. That's when it happened. Midway through my forms, I felt it, a thread of warmth spiraling through my body, separate from muscle and blood. Pure yang energy. It was thin, barely there, but it was real. In my previous life, it took 3 months of daily training to produce even this much. My old master had called me a natural talent back then. This time, with all my past experience guiding every breath and movement, I'd done it in 2 days. It wasn't enough to heal anyone yet, but the 13 Taoist needles technique was now within reach. With more meat and more practice, I'd thicken that energy until it was dense as a mung bean. Then I could start saving lives. Dazhuang and I spent the afternoon building a proper shelter, 10 square meters, room for 2 men plus gear. I helped him chop and haul wood. Then we dug the foundation and lashed everything together. By 4 o'clock, it was done. We headed back out to hunt. 10 minutes passed with nothing. Dazhuang said that was normal. Most hunters went whole days without a single kill. Our morning haul had probably scared off everything nearby. Then the pendant went warm. Dazhuang, I whispered. Look. His eyes went wide. Standing ahead of us by the stream, calm and oblivious, was a roe deer. A female, no antlers, maybe 60 some jin. At market price, that single animal was worth nearly 20 yuan, as much as dozens of rabbits combined. This morning I'd promised him a roe deer. He'd laughed it off. Nobody was laughing now. I crept toward the roe deer 1 careful step at a time. These animals have sharp hearing. Any snapped twig could send it bolting. At 37 meters, the deer's head snapped up and looked right at me. My heart sank. But then a rabbit darted out of a nearby bush, and the deer decided that's all it was. It lowered its head and went back to eating. I closed to 30 meters and drew my bow to full. The arrow punched through the deer's neck. It stumbled, blood pouring, tried to run, and collapsed after 2 steps. Before it even hit the ground, I'd already knocked a second arrow and dropped that rabbit too. Dazhuang was beside himself. A 60 jin roe deer, worth close to 20 yuan just for the meat, and the hide was pristine since I'd hit the neck instead of blasting holes through it with a gun. A clean pelt like that could fetch 15 yuan by itself. We hauled everything back to the shelter. Then the pendant warmed up again. 2 more roe deer came crashing through the brush toward us, one of them bleeding from claw marks. Wolves had been chasing it. I told Dazhuang to get ready with his spear. I'd take the first deer, he'd take the second. When they got within 10 meters, I rose from the grass and fired. Dazhuang charged out screaming, driving his spear straight into the second deer's body. The impact nearly knocked him off his feet, but the deer went down. 3 roe deer in 1 afternoon, plus the rabbits and pheasants from the morning. We had way too much meat to carry home ourselves. I sent Dazhuang back to the village to fetch his father and brother for help hauling. I told him to travel light. No meat. The blood smell would attract wolves. I kept Big Yellow with me since Dazhuang didn't know the dog well enough. The scratch marks on that one deer confirmed wolves were nearby. As long as I stayed in the shelter after dark, I'd be fine. Wolves hunted at night. I spent the remaining daylight hours hunting along the stream, picking off more rabbits, pheasants, and another palm civet. When darkness fell, I roasted 2 chickens, made civet soup, and practiced my fist forms by the fire. The pure yang energy inside me was growing, still thin, but each session made it stronger. I thought about my old Taoist master and wondered if I'd meet him again in this life. Then I heard it. A girl screaming in the forest. Help! Somebody help me! I grabbed a torch, my bow, and my knife. Big Yellow was already barking into the darkness. Through the trees I could make out a shape, something running, something chasing. I fired an arrow into the black. A wolf yelped. I couldn't see well enough to make a killing shot, but the arrow grazed its leg and the torch scared it off. It snarled once and disappeared into the brush. The firelight fell on a girl crumpled on the ground. I recognized her, Wang Chunxiao, a girl from our village. She was barefoot, her feet cut and bleeding, hair wild, clothes torn. She'd been running blind through the forest with a wolf on her heels. When she saw my face, her eyes went wide. Li Qingshan, what are you doing here? Hunting. What are you doing here? Feeding wolves? She burst into tears. Now that she was safe, everything she'd been holding in just came flooding out. I told her to stop crying or the wolves would come back. She clamped her mouth shut immediately, still sniffling, looking pitiful. In the torchlight, I noticed her shirt buttons had popped open during the chase. I looked away. Well, I tried to look away. She caught me and clutched her collar shut, her cheeks going red. Her ankle was twisted from the fall. She couldn't walk. I offered to carry her on my back to the shelter. She climbed on without argument, and I felt every curve pressed against me as I walked. Whatever had driven this girl into the deep forest alone at night, it must have been serious. I'd find out soon enough. I carried Wang Chunxiao on my back to the shelter. Inside, by the light of the campfire, I could see her feet were a mess, cut up, blistered, and her right ankle badly twisted. I knelt down and pulled off her sock. She went stiff as a board. What are you doing? She stammered, her face turning red. Your ankle's dislocated. Hold still. Her foot was small and pale, like something carved from jade. I wrapped my rough hands around it and started working the joint with the massage techniques my Taoist master had taught me. At first, she was tense and embarrassed. She'd never been touched by a man before. But as the pain started fading and warmth spread through her foot, she relaxed. Her eyes went half closed and she bit her lower lip, caught somewhere between relief and shyness. Then I snapped the bone back into place. One clean pop. She flinched, but when I told her to stand and try it, she put weight on it and her eyes went wide. No pain. She couldn't believe it. You know medicine too? What else have you been hiding? I gave her the same story old doctor in the mountains taught me before he left. Now that she was calm, I asked the real question. What was a young girl doing alone in the deep forest at night? Her father wanted her to marry Zhao Ba, the village party secretary's son. She refused and ran away from home. Got lost in the forest, wandered for hours, then the wolf found her. I needed her to understand how stupid that was. So I told her, bluntly, exactly what could happen to a girl alone out here. A man could do whatever he wanted to her, and nobody would ever know. Kill her, bury the body, and walk away clean. Or worse, some lonely bachelor could drag her to a cellar, chain her up like a dog, and keep her there for years until she went mad. I watched the color drain from her face. Are you scared? I asked. She nodded, tears streaming down. Good. Don't ever run off alone like this again. Then I shifted to the actual problem. Her father wanted the marriage because Zhao Ba's family had power. The secretary could protect their household since they were outsiders in the village. The wedding wasn't until next year. That meant there was time. I can fix this, I told her. I have a way to make sure you never have to marry Zhao Ba. But you have to listen to me and do what I say. Deal. Hope lit up her face. She grabbed my arm like a drowning person grabs a rope. You really can help? What's the price? What do I have to give you in return? That surprised me. She looked naive, but she understood nothing was free. Smart girl. I don't know yet, I said. When it's done, you decide what you want to give back. Even if it's just a gene of sweet potatoes. Really? Even sweet potatoes? Whatever you think is fair. She looked at me for a long moment. It won't be sweet potatoes. I promise you won't be disappointed. While we talked, I worked on her other foot too. The massage would keep both feet from swelling by morning. She stared at my face in the firelight, and I could feel her relaxing into my touch, getting used to it. That kind of comfort between a man and a woman is dangerous. Once a woman lets a man's hands become familiar, her guard drops everywhere else too. Outside, a wolf howled. Chun Xiao went rigid with fear. I called Big Yellow inside, sealed the door, and brought in some hot coals to keep the shelter warm. I'd built a stone-lined pit in the floor for exactly this. Coals on wet clay so nothing would catch fire, with gaps in the walls to let the smoke out. Don't worry, I told her. The bonfire's still burning outside. They won't come close. She hadn't eaten in a full day. When I pulled a skinned rabbit from the corner, her eyes went round and bright like a child's. She crouched by the fire and watched me roast it, swallowing hard every time the smell hit her. While it cooked, she stood behind me and rubbed my shoulders with her small soft hands. No strength to speak of, but it felt like warm water running over stone. When the rabbit was done, I salted it and handed it over. She tore into it and nearly cried from happiness. She said it was the best thing she'd eaten in years. She finished every last scrap, then looked at me with a complicated expression, like she was already trying to figure out how to repay me for all of this. Back in Stone Creek Village, Dazhuang burst through his parents' door drenched in sweat. His mother and father had been sitting up all night, sick with worry. When he told them what we'd caught, 3 roe deer, 11 rabbits, pheasants, a palm civet, nobody believed him. His own brother thought he was lying. His father said even old Zhao Zhanshan couldn't have done that in such a short time. Dazhuang swore on everything. If I'm lying, I'll never go hunting with Qingshan again. That got his father to agree. But then rain started hammering down outside, and they had to wait it out before heading back up the mountain. Meanwhile, up in the forest, things got bad. The rain killed our campfire. Just like that, total darkness. And then the howling started. Not one wolf this time. I counted maybe 10 from the sounds echoing around us. They could smell us, and with no fire to keep them away, they started circling the shelter. Chun Xiao was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. A heavy thud hit the wall, wolf claws scraping at the wood. These animals had found us, and they weren't leaving until morning. The cold was the next problem. Summer rain plus whined through the gaps in the shelter walls. I was fine. The pure yang energy running through my body kept me warm. But Chun Xiao was thin, underfed, and wearing almost nothing. She curled into a ball, trying to hold in whatever heat she had left. It wasn't working. Her whole body was trembling. I reached out and pulled her against my chest. She stiffened for a second, tried to pull away, but then she felt how warm I was, and she stopped fighting it. She pressed herself close, and the shaking gradually eased. I could feel her heartbeat slowing down as fear gave way to comfort. Outside, wolves, rain, darkness, danger. Inside, a girl curled up in my arms, her breath soft against my neck. I'd be lying if I said nothing stirred in me. But with wolves ready to tear through the wall at any moment, this was not the time. I kept my eyes on the door and my hands where they belonged. Eventually, the rain stopped. The wolves gave up and slipped away. Big Yellow stayed alert by the entrance while I closed my eyes, meaning to rest for just a minute. I woke up to morning sunlight cutting through the cracks. Chun Xiao's eyes were already open, looking up at me. We stared at each other for one strange, quiet moment. Then she scrambled to her feet, face flushed, and mumbled a thank you for last night. I stood up and looked down at her. I saved your life. How are you going to repay me? She fidgeted with the hem of her shirt, heart pounding visibly. What? What do you want? Haven't decided yet. I'll let you know. I patted her on the head like a kid and walked outside. Big Yellow was racing in circles, relieved to be free. I checked the smaller shelter where we'd stored the meat. Everything was untouched. The wolves hadn't gotten in. I made a fire and roasted 4 wild chickens. Chun Xiao ate one slowly, savoring every bite. I demolished 3. She watched me eat with wide eyes, probably understanding now where my broad shoulders came from. After breakfast, I ran through my fist forms. The pure yang energy was noticeably stronger than yesterday. The constant eating and training was paying off. While I practiced, the jade gourd pendant slipped out from my collar, and I noticed something new. It was absorbing the morning sunlight, glowing faintly from within. I didn't understand it yet, so I tucked it away and kept going. Chun Xiao watched me from the fire, chewing her chicken, with a look on her face I was starting to recognize. She was measuring me, my body, my skills, my face. I caught her thinking about something and then shaking her head, blushing. She knew my family situation. She knew any girl who married into that house would end up like my sister-in-law Guixiong, ground down by my grandfather's tyranny. But I could see the thought forming anyway. If only this man could break free from that family. I turned to her. So, are you coming hunting with me, or staying in the shelter? I'm coming with you, Chun Xiao said without a second's hesitation. She'd rather face the forest with me than sit alone in a shelter that wolves had been clawing at all night. We followed the stream again. Within 2 minutes the pendant warmed up. 2 pheasants ahead, a rooster mounted on a hen, doing what nature intended. Chun Xiao pointed excitedly and said they were fighting. I told her I couldn't shoot them right now. It felt wrong to kill something in the middle of making the next generation. Her face went scarlet when she realized what they were actually doing. She went quiet, and I could feel her embarrassment radiating off her like heat from a stove. Our eyes met. She was close enough that my breath was hitting her face. She slowly closed her eyes, lips parted, waiting. I shot the pheasants. Got them, I called out, already running to collect the kill. 1 arrow, 2 birds. Behind me, Chun Xiao let out an annoyed little huff. I knew exactly what she'd been expecting. But a man who gives in too easily never keeps a woman's interest. Let the fish think it's about to be released. That's when the hook sinks deepest. We kept hunting. 5 minutes later, I dropped a palm civet hiding in tall grass from 50 meters. Chun Xiao's jaw dropped. After that came 3 more rabbits, another pheasant, and then the pendant warmed again. This time leading me to a raccoon dog, what the locals called a fur dog. Its pelt alone was worth serious money, perfect material for fur coats. 1 arrow through the neck at 60 meters. Down it went. Chun Xiao had started the morning impressed. By 9 o'clock, she'd upgraded her earlier thought. She'd been thinking any woman who married me would eat meat every few days. Now she corrected herself. It would be meat every single day. Her only complaint was that we had too many kills to carry. What a problem to have. Back at the shelter, I lay down to rest while waiting for Dazhuang. Chun Xiao lay beside me and started asking about my family, whether anyone had arranged a marriage for me, whether I'd thought about splitting from my grandfather's household. I told her the truth. No girl's family would let their daughter marry into our home. Everyone knew how my grandfather treated us, but I was working on splitting off. Once I was independent, everything would change. While we talked, my hand drifted over and came to rest on her thigh. Summer clothes are thin. She trembled slightly, but said nothing. Didn't move away. Didn't acknowledge it. Just kept talking, her face getting redder and redder. Then Big Yellow started barking outside. Dazhuang's voice boomed through the trees. Mountain brother. I'm back, damn it. I got up and went outside. Dazhuang had brought his father and his younger brother Erzwang. Both of them nearly 2 meters tall, towering over their short father who barely cleared 170. Must have been hard for the old man, walking between those 2 beanpoles. When Chun Xiao stepped out of the shelter behind me, everyone froze. Dazhuang's eyes went wide. His father gave me a long, complicated look, the kind that said he knew exactly what a young man and a pretty girl had been doing alone in a forest shelter. I could see him thinking, this rascal actually got one of the village's 3 prettiest girls? I explained the whole story, how she'd run from an arranged marriage, gotten lost, nearly been eaten by wolves. Dazhuang's father nodded and gently lectured her about how dangerous it was for a girl to wander alone. She promised not to run off again. Then I opened the small shelter where we'd stored the meat. Dazhuang started tossing game out 1 piece at a time. Rabbits, pheasants, palm civets, the raccoon dog. His father and brother watched with their mouths hanging open, the pile growing bigger with every throw. Then the first roe deer hit the ground with a heavy thud. 60-some gene. Dust flew up around it. The old man's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. The second roe deer came flying out. Then the third. 3 roe deer, 10 rabbits, 7 pheasants, 2 palm civets, 1 raccoon dog. 251 gene of game, total. Dazhuang's father stood there speechless, staring at the mountain of meat. He'd thought his son was exaggerating. 2 first-time hunters bringing back more than they could carry? Impossible. Old veterans would weep at a haul like this. Don't look at me, Dazhuang said. Every single kill was Mountain Brothers. I just carried stuff. Now came the logistics problem. For men and 1 girl. I calculated everyone's carrying capacity, The two brothers could handle 90 jin each between them. The father 30, me 40, Chun Xiao maybe 20. That still left about 70 jin we couldn't haul. But I already had a plan for that. Dazhuang's father, Uncle Kai, couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the full haul. When he started stripping the hides, he noticed every single kill was a neck shot, not a scratch on the pelts. He said he'd never seen marksmanship like that, not from any hunter in the region. We stripped all the skins and hung them to dry in the sun. The roe deer bones got carved out and burned. That cut the weight down enough for 5 people to carry. We roasted rabbit and pheasant for lunch, and I watched Uncle Kai's attitude toward me change with every bite of meat. By the time we finished eating, I could see it in his eyes. He'd decided to let Dazhuang keep hunting with me after all. On the way down, Dazhuang and his brother Erzwang started telling their father about their unmarried cousin, saying she'd be perfect for me. Chuanxiao's face went stiff beside me, and Uncle Kai caught it immediately. He smacked both sons with a look and told them to worry about their own love lives first. Smart man. We reached Stone Creek Village around 5 in the afternoon. The usual crowd of men was lounging by the village entrance, gossiping and killing time. Women and children too. Every head turned when they saw us coming down the road, loaded with meat. The whispers started immediately. Some people were impressed. Others couldn't believe it. And then Zhao Chong, that gambling rat, Zhao Guo's worthless son, opened his big mouth. That deadbeat never hunted a day in his life. He probably stole all of it. That was all it took. Suddenly half the crowd was nodding along. A few good people spoke up for me. Li Taijiang the blacksmith, Zhao the carpenter, Tofu Shishir. But others jumped on the accusation. Pockmark Annie, Zhao Yutian, and a few more declared I was definitely a thief. I said nothing. I just listened carefully, noting every name, every face, who defended me and who attacked me. These people would be remembered. Dazhuang shouted that he could vouch for every kill. Chun Xiao spoke up too, but I didn't need their words to settle this. I grabbed Zhao Chong by the collar and yanked him forward. He tried to squirm free, but my grip was iron. I told him simply, "You're accusing me. Prove it. Show everyone how I stole this meat. Where did I steal it from? When? How?" He couldn't answer. He just kept sputtering that he was sure I'd stolen it. So I flipped it on him. "Fine. I'm accusing you of stealing 100 yuan from my family. Prove you didn't." He stammered. "I didn't steal anything." "Then prove it." "I can't prove." "So you did steal it?" "No." "Then how can you accuse me with?" "No proof either." The crowd went quiet. He had nothing. I reminded everyone that just 2 days ago, his father Zhao Gui had tried to frame me for rape. Now the son was trying to frame me for theft. Runs in the family, I guess. Then I beat him. Slapped him across the face first. The crack echoed through the whole village entrance. Then I drove my fists into him like rain on a tin roof. He crumpled to the ground, curled up, crying and begging me to stop. The villagers pulled me off eventually, but nobody felt sorry for him. A gambling addict and a slanderer getting what he deserved. I looked around the crowd. Anyone else want to claim this meat is stolen? Step forward with your proof. Dead silence. Good. Then let's go. We started walking again when Pockmark Auntie suddenly blocked my path. She pointed at one of the pheasants hanging from my waist and said her grandson was growing and needed meat. Could she have one? Sure, I said. 5 Mao. Her face twisted up like she'd bitten a lemon. You're charging me? We're neighbors. Haven't you heard the saying, a close neighbor is better than a distant relative? You caught so many, what's one chicken? My grandson needs to eat. And if your family ever needs help, I'll be there. She stared at me like I was the most ungrateful brat in the world. As if the woman who'd just been calling me a thief 30 seconds ago now deserved a free chicken because we lived on the same road. Pockmark Annie had just been calling me a thief, and now she wanted a free chicken. The nerve. Auntie, I said, I'm still a bachelor with no wife. You've got 2 daughters-in-law. How about you send one over to keep me company tonight, and I'll give you the chicken? She nearly exploded. I shoved past her and kept walking. Behind me, Zhao Chong was still lying on the ground, telling anyone who'd listen that the meat was stolen and the government would come shoot me. Pockmark Annie was cursing my name. Zhao Yutian, my grandfather's old rival, was predicting I'd never hunt this well again. Let them talk. I had meat to store. Back at the Li family compound, everyone was eating dinner at the usual table. The usual arrangement, grandfather and eldest uncle's family up top with corn cakes, stir-fry, and salted duck egg. Second uncle's family in the middle with cornbread. My parents and sister-in-law Guixiang at the bottom with nothing but sweet potato porridge and pickles. I wasn't there yet, but I heard everything that happened at that table through the thin walls as I approached. My cousin Li Qingshu had been running his mouth. He told my father that since I'd probably died in the forest, they should hurry and tell Li Hu that the new house wasn't mine to mortgage, it belonged to Qingshu. Grandfather nodded along approvingly. Then Guixiang spoke up. She said she believed I'd come back safe, and with game too. Qingshu laughed in her face, said I was a clueless first-timer who'd be lucky to survive, let alone catch anything. Second uncle's wife piled on, bragging about her twin son's learning carpentry, calling me a worthless drifter. Grandfather sighed about what a disappointment my father's sons were. Then Qingshu made his big mistake. He announced, loud and confident, if Li Qingshan brings back even 2 chickens or rabbits, I'll kneel down before him. That's when I walked through the gate. Li Qingshu, I called out. I heard that. Behind me came Dazhuang, Erzwang, and Uncle Kai. All of us loaded down with meat. Wild chickens dangling from our belts, rabbit carcasses over our shoulders, roe deer meat stacked high. We dumped the whole pile right in the middle of the courtyard. The entire family went silent. My father's face lit up like sunrise. Guixiang's eyes filled with tears of relief and pride. Grandfather, eldest uncle, Qingshu, they all stared at the mountain of game like they were seeing ghosts. Uncle Kai confirmed it for everyone. Every kill was mine. 3 roe deer, plus rabbits, pheasants, palm civets, a raccoon dog. Worth a small fortune at market. The villagers who'd followed us started calling for Qingshu to kneel. He'd made the bet publicly. His parents tried to weasel out, saying children's words didn't count, that Qingshu was a student headed for government work and couldn't possibly kneel to someone like me. I played along, told them that breaking a public promise showed exactly the kind of character that would disqualify someone from government service. They started sweating. Then I offered an out. I know you have half a gene of brown sugar. Give it to me, and we'll call it even. Qingshu ran to get the sugar. Half a gene of brown sugar was precious. My mother and Guixiang had never tasted it in their lives, while Qingshu drank it regularly. All paid for with blood squeezed from my father's labor. When Qingshu handed it over, I pressed a pressure point on his hand, just a tiny pulse of pure yang energy into a hidden meridian. His legs buckled instantly. He dropped to his knees right in front of me, in front of the whole crowd. Everyone froze. Then the laughter started. Qingshu's face went white as paper. His father yanked him up, but the damage was done. The whole village would be telling this story for weeks. Then grandfather made his move. He announced the distribution of my game. 1 chicken stewed for Qingshu as a study snack, 1 for grandfather himself, 1 for eldest uncle's household, 1 for second uncle's. The rest would be sold at market. The money handed over to him, plus a gene of brown sugar bought for Qingshu to replace what I'd taken. And my family, my parents, Guixiang, the people I'd been hunting for, nothing, not a single piece of meat. Grandfather even demanded I hand over whatever cornmeal I had left from the trip and said I should stick to sweet potato porridge. He said it would build character. My father asked meekly if maybe I could at least have 1 chicken, since I'd caught them all. Grandfather exploded. Said I had no manners for making Qingshu kneel, that my father had raised 2 useless sons, and that we deserved nothing. I stood there listening to the old man carve up my kill and hand every piece to everyone except the people who actually needed it. The same pattern as always. Bleed the third house, dry to fatten the rest. But this time, I wasn't the same pushover kid who'd just take it quietly. The old man announced his distribution plan like a king dividing spoils. 1 chicken for Qingshu's studies, 1 for himself, 1 for eldest uncle's family, 1 for second uncle's family. Everything else sold at market with the money handed to him. And for my family, the people I'd actually hunted for, nothing, not a single bite. He even wanted my leftover cornmeal sent to grandmother. My father asked, quietly, if maybe I could have just 1 chicken since I'd caught them all. Grandfather exploded. Said I was ill-mannered, that my father had raised failures, that we deserved nothing. That was it. I was done. Li Laodan, I said, these animals are mine. I caught them. You don't get to divide up a single piece. I pulled out my machete and drove it into the dinner table. The wood split open with a crack that echoed through the courtyard. Splinters flew everywhere. The twins from second uncle's family flinched like they'd been slapped. Even grandfather froze for a second. Second uncle recovered first, puffing up his chest, calling me a thug. I smiled at him and said I respected him as an elder and would never lay a hand on him. He looked pleased for about half a second. Then I told him his sons were my generation, though, and I had no problem beating them. Before anyone could blink, I drove my fist into Li Qingyo's stomach. He doubled over and hit the ground. His brother Qingyu barely had time to open his mouth before I grabbed his arm and flipped him over my shoulder. He crashed down beside his brother, both of them moaning. Then I turned and kicked Qingshu square in the chest. He flew backward, literally left the ground, and landed on his back, wheezing about how he was an intellectual and fighting was beneath him. 3 men down in 3 seconds. The whole courtyard went dead quiet. Dazhuang and Erzwang stepped forward like 2 walls and told everyone that anyone who touched me would answer to them. Second uncle, who'd been about to charge, stopped cold. Grandfather's face was purple with fury. If you don't accept me as head of this family, then get out. Leave. The villagers watching all smirked. They thought he had me cornered. No land deed, no house, nowhere to go. Fine, I said. Tomorrow we go to the government office and split the household registration. I'm taking my family out. I turned to my parents. Dad, Mom, are you coming? Silence. Grandfather glared at my father with decades of domination behind his eyes. He was certain the old man would never defy him. My mother spoke first. Son, wherever you go, your mother goes. Then Guixiang stepped forward. I'm leaving too. All eyes fell on my father. His fists were shaking. Years of submission pressed down on him like a mountain. But something had cracked open tonight. He looked at his wife, his daughter-in-law, his son. Then he said, louder than I'd ever heard him speak in this house, Father, you have 3 sons. But I only have 1 wife and 1 son. They matter more to me than you do. And I've given you everything these past years. You've never once given anything back. We're splitting this family. Tomorrow, I could have cried. That was all I'd needed, for my father to finally stand up. Grandfather tried his final move. He declared we'd leave with nothing. No property, no money, no farmland. Just the clothes on our backs. I laughed. You forgot about Zhao Gui's house. That's mine, legally registered. We have somewhere to live. His face crumbled. He'd forgotten about that. As for the farmland, I continued, it was divided by head count. My father's name and mine are both on the land certificate. You can't erase that. I offered him a deal. 5 yuan, and we'd give up our share of the fields. He didn't have the cash, so I made him write an IOU with his thumbprint. Qingshu was smirking as he wrote it, thinking I was a fool for trading good farmland for 5 yuan. He didn't know what I knew. Next year, everything would be collectivized. The communes were coming. All private farmland would be pooled together. Those fields would be worth nothing to anyone. I was selling air for 5 yuan. Then I picked up 2 chickens, 2 rabbits, and a palm civet and handed them to my mother. Cook these. Tonight we're having a real dinner. Our family and Dazhuang's family together. My mother stood there holding the meat like she'd never seen food before. In all her years in this house, she'd never once been allowed to cook good food for her own family. Guixiang took the game from my hands. Our fingers touched. She looked up at me with relief, with gratitude, with something else I didn't want to name just yet. She pulled my mother toward the kitchen. My father stood guard over the cellar full of meat. For the first time in his life, he told the rest of the family that if anyone tried to touch our things, they'd have to go through him. His voice was still shaking, but he meant it. I gave Chun Xiao a rabbit to take home, told her to say she'd gone hunting on the mountain and ran into us. She asked when I'd go up the mountain again. I said soon, after I sold the meat and fixed up the new house. She wanted to know about my plan to save her from marrying Zhao Ba. I told her tomorrow, after market day. Then I headed to Zhao Zhanshan's place with some rabbit and chicken. The old hunter had given me his dog and his knowledge. His daughter had trusted me with their most precious companion. I owed them more than I could repay with a few birds, but it was a start. Behind me, I could hear grandfather summoning the first and second households into the main room for a meeting. They were plotting something, I was sure of it. But as I walked away, I heard my father's voice, low and fierce, whispering to himself by the cellar door. If any of you dare touch my son, I'll fight you to the death. It was the bravest thing he'd ever said, and it was enough. While my mother and Guixiang were cooking up a feast in the kitchen, grandfather was holding a war council in the main hall. I found out later what they plotted. The old man couldn't believe my father had actually defied him. His whole world was shaking. He sat there puffing his pipe, surrounded by his loyal first and second households, scheming how to bring us back under his thumb. Qing Shu, that weasel, laid out the plan. Don't fight us now, he said. Just let us leave. Without farmland, we'd starve. A hunter can't feed a family of 4 forever. Sooner or later we'd come crawling back, and then grandfather could punish us properly and seize Zhao Gui's house too. Best of all, if I kept going up the mountain, eventually I'd die up there, and then my father would have no son, no leverage, nothing. They could do whatever they wanted with him. But Qing Shu had another trick. Find me a wife. If some girl's family demanded bride price, I'd need money, which meant more hunting trips, which meant more chances to die on the mountain. They were literally trying to marry me into an early grave. Second uncle's wife piped up. She had a niece back home of marrying age. Grandfather told her to go visit her family and make it happen. They were treating this like a military operation. Meanwhile, they had to reorganize the household chores. With my family gone, there was nobody to do the farm work. Second uncle's twins, who'd been happily apprenticing with the village carpenter, suddenly got dragged back to the fields. They whined about it, but grandfather shut them down. No work, no food. Then the smell of my mother's cooking drifted in through the windows. Stir-fried chicken. The whole main hall went silent. Every single one of them, grandfather, both uncles, their wives, all 3 cousins, sat there swallowing their own spit, stomachs growling, pretending they didn't care. It's just meat, grandfather muttered. I'll buy some tomorrow in town. Sure you will, old man. Sure you will. On my way to Zhao Zhanshan's house, I ran into Zhao Chong on the road. I told him his family had until noon tomorrow to move out of the house. He puffed up and said he'd only lost our fight earlier because Da Zhuang and Erzwang were backing me, and if I tried anything now, he'd take me down. I didn't even bother responding. Just walked past him. Back at their house, Zhao Gui decided to play the deadbeat. He told his son they weren't moving. Where would they go? This was their home for generations. Let Li Qingshan try to force them out. He couldn't kill them, could he? As long as they refused to leave, what could I do? Then the whole rotten family turned on Naixiang again. Zhao Gui blamed her for failing to trap me in bed that day. His wife said if Naixiang had just done her job, the gambling debt would have been settled. Zhao Chong slapped the food bowl right out of her hands and sent her off to wash laundry in the dark, calling her a curse and a broom star. I didn't see any of this happen, but I knew these people. In my past life, this abuse went on every single day until Naixiang couldn't take it anymore and walked into the river. This time, things were going to end differently. Zhao Gui thought he could squat in my house and wait me out. He had no idea what was coming. At Zhao Zhanshan's place, Shanxing opened the gate when she heard big yellow barking. I held out 2 rabbits and a pheasant. She looked shocked, then tried to push them back into my hands. She figured this was probably all I'd caught on my first trip, and I couldn't afford to give food away. She had no idea I'd brought home over 250 gene of game. But I didn't correct her. I just smiled and told her to take them. Shanxing tried to refuse the food again. I told her we'd caught plenty more. 3 roe deer on top of all the rabbits and pheasants. Her eyes went wide. She couldn't believe a first-timer had done all that, but I told her the whole village had already seen the haul, so she'd hear about it soon enough. I said it was probably just natural talent. Pick up a bough, pull it back, and everything I aimed at went down. She told me to be careful on the mountain and to raise more hunting dogs if I could. Her father had been saved by his 3 dogs and a fellow hunter. Without them, he'd be dead. I promised to come back tomorrow to examine her father's injuries. She laughed and asked if I was a doctor now too. I told her I'd been learning from an old mountain herbalist for years and planned to buy acupuncture needles at the market tomorrow. She said she'd be waiting to see my skills, still smiling like she didn't quite believe me. As she walked inside with the game, I caught myself watching. Long legs, tiny waist, hair swaying. She was one of the village's 3 golden flowers, all right. The girl next door type, the kind that doesn't know how beautiful she is yet. Inside the house, I heard Zhanshan's weak voice asking Shanxing who'd visited. She told him about the rabbits and chicken and about my claim to no medicine. The old hunter defended me, said I was a good kid who still remembered his debts. But I could hear the sadness underneath his words. He knew his body was failing. He was worrying about what would happen to his daughter after he was gone. A young girl alone in a mountain village, easy prey for anyone. I was going to make sure that didn't happen. Back home, the evening turned into the best night our family had ever had. Uncle Kai brought his wife over to help cook. He'd also brought 2 bottles of sorghum liquor, 2 yuans worth, a real extravagance. My mother and Guixiang were already in the kitchen with the chicken, rabbit, and palm civet. I asked Uncle Kai's permission to take Dazhuang hunting again in a few days. Before the old man could even answer, Dazhuang jumped in saying he'd sneak out whether his father agreed or not. I scolded him for cutting off his father. Uncle Kai sighed and gave in. But when Erzwang tried to volunteer too, his father shut him down cold. One son risking his life on the mountain was enough. I told Erzwang to be patient. Once I had more experience, I'd bring him along. I knew it was just a matter of time. After another successful hunt or two, Uncle Kai wouldn't be able to resist. Then I decided to cook the chicken myself. I heated the wok until it was smoking, poured in soybean oil at 7 mao a jin, fried ginger slices until golden, then tossed in the chopped chicken pieces. Low heat first, letting the oil and meat react together, crackling, sizzling, the smell filling the whole kitchen and pouring out through every crack in the walls. When the pieces turned golden and dry, I added scallion segments, dried chili, Sichuan peppercorn, soy sauce, salt, then hot water to braise. 10 minutes later, high heat to reduce the sauce, a handful of fresh peppers at the end, and out it came. Not quite authentic. This era didn't have half the spices I needed, but it was the best fried chicken anyone in this village had ever smelled. The aroma drifted across the entire compound. In grandfather's room, the old man was pacing back and forth, cursing us for wasting good meat instead of selling it, while swallowing his own saliva every 3 seconds. In first uncle's room, Qing Shu was whimpering that he wanted meat. His father sent his wife out to try begging some from us. But second uncle's wife got there first. She came strolling over to our table where the golden chicken and braised rabbit were steaming, her eyes practically glowing. She made small talk, complimented the food, clearly fishing for an invitation to taste some. I looked at her and said, "You'll never eat fried chicken in your life. Why ask so many questions?" She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. She actually thought about it. Before marriage, she was just a money-losing daughter who was lucky to sit at the table. After marriage, even during holidays, the meat went to the men. The best thing she'd ever eaten was pork fat mixed with rice. Fried chicken? Never once. She stood there for a long moment, staring at my mother sitting at the table with actual meat on her plate, and I could see the thought forming on her face as clearly as writing on a wall. If only she'd married the third son instead of the second. Second uncle's wife stood there staring at our food, so I told her she was welcome to lick the chicken bones after we finished. She stormed off cursing, and a minute later I could hear second uncle slapping her around in their room because she'd mouthed off about him being useless. Lovely family. First uncle's wife had been about to come beg for scraps too, but after seeing what happened, she decided against it. We sat down to eat, my parents, Guixiang, Uncle Kai's whole family, and me. 2 fried chickens, 2 braised rabbits, and a palm civet stew. More meat than any of us had seen in years. Everyone's chopsticks were flying. Guixiang sat next to me, but she was eating the way she always did, tiny careful bites, reaching only for the pickles out of habit. Years of being the lowest person at the table had trained her not to touch the good food. I picked up both chicken legs and dropped them into her bowl. "Eat," I said. She looked up at me with warm eyes and smiled. A real smile, maybe the first one I'd seen from her in this life. After dinner, I told Dazhuang to bring his cart early tomorrow morning. We were going to market to sell the roe deer meat. I also had him deliver a bowl of rabbit stew to Zhao Hongqi's house. His mother was sick and his wife had just given birth. They probably had nothing to eat. I was up before 2 in the morning. Dazhuang and Erzwang were already at the gate with the cart. We loaded up all 3 roe deer's worth of meat, 150 jin, plus the raccoon dog, and set off for the market an hour's walk away. I had my plan worked out. After selling the meat, grandfather and my father would go to town to split the household registration. I wanted 3 separate household books, one for me, one for my parents, one for Guixiang. 3 households meant 3 land allotments when the communes came. 3 housing plots. I tried to get plots right next to Zhao Gui's old place so I could connect them all together. We reached the market around 3:30. It was still dark, but vendors were already setting up and the first buyers were drifting in. I laid out the roe deer meat on the cart. "How much?" an old man asked right away. "Market price for pork is 4 mao a jin," I said. "Roe deer normally goes for 3 mao too." But today my brother here just had a baby born, so we're celebrating 3 mao flat. The old man tried to bargain lower. I pointed to 2 different piles. This here is female roe deer, 2 mao 9. That pile is male. Male costs 3 mao because it strengthens a man's vitality, if you know what I mean. His eyes lit up. Really? That works? Buy a gene of the male, eat it tonight, and see for yourself. He bought 2 gene on the spot. Of course it would work. These men lived on nothing but corn paste and sweet potato porridge year-round. Feed them actual protein, and their bodies would respond to anything. I wasn't lying. I was just marketing. Word spread through the market like fire. Every man within earshot suddenly needed male roe deer meat. 3 gene here, 2 gene there, 1 gene for my neighbor who asked me to pick some up. The meat vanished fast. By 5 o'clock, all 3 roe deer and the raccoon dog were sold. 50 yuan total. I counted out 25 and held it out to Dazhuang. You're half. He shook his head so hard I thought his neck would snap. Mountain brother, are you crazy? I didn't do anything up there except carry stuff. I'm not taking half. I tried to push the money on him, but he wouldn't budge. His father had talked to him last night and laid down rules. Dazhuang would take 10% of whatever we sold, no more. If Erzwang came along too, the brothers would split 20% between them. His reasoning was sound. I was the one doing all the hunting. Dazhuang could be replaced by anyone willing to carry meat. But no other hunter could produce what I produced. He took 5 yuan and shoved 20 back into my hand. That's more than fair, he said. I've never eaten so much meat in my life. Just promise you'll keep bringing me along. I looked at this giant, honest, stubborn man and felt something tighten in my chest. In a world full of Zhao Guis and Li Lautens, people like Dazhuang were rare. I'd make sure he and his family ate well for a long time. 45 yuan in my pocket. The shopping list in my head was long. Pots, bowls, rice, wheat flour, soybean oil, sesame oil, lard, cotton cloth, kerosene lamps, pickling jars, liquor, vinegar, soy sauce, soap, matches. Everything needed to set up a new home from nothing. I gave Dazhuang and Erzwang an extra 4 yuan, 2 each, to buy whatever they wanted. Then we headed for the supply cooperative to stock up on everything I needed for the new house. The cooperative didn't open until 7:30, so I figured we'd eat breakfast first. That's when I ran into the last people I wanted to see, my grandfather, eldest uncle, and Qing Shu. They'd come early to the township office to process the household split. The old man hadn't slept all night, tossing and turning, tortured by the smell of my fried chicken still lingering in his memory. He wanted me out of the family as fast as possible so he could watch me starve and come crawling back. Qing Shu was also here to sign up for the Rural Literacy Program, what grandfather proudly called becoming an intellectual. Little did any of them know, this program was exactly the path I'd planned for Wang Chunxiao. If she scored well and became a literacy teacher for the village brigade, her status would rise enough that her father would never force her to marry Zhaoba. That was my plan for saving her. We all ended up at the same breakfast shop. The owner was a woman around 27 or 28. Curvy figure, hair falling along her cheeks, a sly prettiness about her. The kind of woman men pretended not to stare at while absolutely staring. I ordered big. 8 fried dough sticks, 12 meat buns, 8 bowls of porridge. Every head in the place turned. Erzwang's eyes went wide. My father started fretting about the cost. But I told them we had money now, and there was no reason to mistreat ourselves anymore. The whole order came to 1 yuan and 30 fun. At the other table, grandfather was whispering to Qing Shu about how I was a fool burning through money, and how they should eat as much as possible on my tab. Qing Shu was already drooling. He'd never had a meat bun or fried dough stick in his entire life. The old man told him to eat at least 2 buns, 2 sticks, and 2 bowls of porridge. They wanted to bleed me dry. Let them chew. I could always hunt more. When the owner brought the bill, she let her soft fingers trail across my hand as she took the money, and gave me a look with one eyebrow slightly raised. She was a flirtatious one. I won't pretend I didn't notice. She was exactly the kind of older woman who knew how to make a young man's blood run hot. I looked right back at her, and she seemed pleased with herself. Just then, a girl with a ponytail and a red hair ribbon walked up to the counter. She ordered a block of hot tofu with chili, too fun. Then she patted her pockets and her face fell. She'd forgotten her money. The owner shook her head. No credit for strangers. Shu jumped in from his table. Come on, she's pretty. Just let her pay tomorrow. But when the owner asked if he'd cover the 2 fun himself, he went silent as a stone. All talk, no action. Typical. Put it on my bill, I said. The owner nodded immediately and handed the girl her tofu. Then she glanced at Shu and said loud enough for everyone to hear. Miss, don't listen to what men say. Watch what they do. Some people talk big but are completely useless. Shu's face went red as a beet. The whole shop was looking at him. The girl turned to me. She had bright, intelligent eyes and carried herself differently from village girls. Cleaner clothes, a faint scent of snow cream on her skin. She told me her name was Su Wanin and that she'd just arrived in town for work. She insisted on knowing my name so she could repay the 2 fun. It's 2 fun, I said. Don't worry about it. I'm Li Qingshan. Sit down, eat with us. I scooted my stool to make room. She sat beside me, holding her plain block of tofu, watching us tear into mountains of meat buns and golden fried sticks. I could see her swallowing hard every few seconds, her eyes locked on the food. She hadn't eaten this well in a long time either. This girl wasn't from around here. Her name, her manners, even the way she spoke, everything said city education, not country soil. I didn't know who she was yet, but helping her cost me 2 fun and might have earned me something worth far more. In times like these, a small kindness planted at the right moment could grow into something you'd never expect. At the breakfast shop, the owner brought out our food and started walking it toward grandfather's table. I stopped her. We're not together. Those 3 are separate. The owner redirected the steaming meat buns and golden fried sticks to our table. Grandfather's face went purple. He slammed his fist on his table so hard the old wood cracked and split apart. The owner's husband came out with a cleaver. You break it, you pay? 2 mao. Now, 2 mao was exactly the money grandfather had brought to buy half a gene of pork, the meat he'd been fantasizing about all night after smelling my fried chicken. He handed it over with shaking hands. No breakfast, no meat, nothing. Meanwhile, I was handing out meat buns like a king. I even gave one to a girl sitting next to me. Su Wanin, a stranger with a ponytail and red hair ribbon who'd tried to buy a 2 fun block of tofu, but forgot her money. Shu had volunteered to help her with words, but not with wallet. I'd covered her bill, and now she was sitting with us, nibbling on a bun I'd pressed into her hands. Everyone else ate until they couldn't breathe. 6 buns, 3 sticks, and 5 bowls of porridge between my father, Dazhuang, and Erzwang. Su Wanin managed 1 bun, 1 bowl of porridge, and an oil stick I forced on her. She sat there rubbing her stomach with a pained look. I finished everything else. 5 buns, 4 sticks, 2 bowls of porridge. 70% full. Grandfather sat at the next table watching every bite, stomach growling loud enough to hear. Shu was cursing the old man under his breath for smashing that table and wasting their food money. I ordered 4 more buns and 4 more sticks to take home for my mother in Guixiang. The owner wrapped them up and let her fingers trail across my hand again as she took the money. That woman was trouble, but the fun kind. Turns out Su Wanin worked at the Township Supply Cooperative, exactly where I needed to shop. She opened the store early just for me as a thank you for the 2 fun. I bought everything on my list. A big iron wok, a small pot, soap, matches, kerosene, pickling jars, sugar, liquor, cooking oils, snacks, and 2 pairs of embroidered cloth. Shoes for my mother in Guixiang. 30 yuan total. Su Wanin gave me generous portions on every weighed item and threw in a handful of fruit candies at the end. She also asked Dazhuang behind my back whether I had a sweetheart. He said no. While waiting for the government office to open, I ducked into the township clinic to buy acupuncture needles. There I found our village chief, Li Shengli, limping in agony. An old war wound. A bullet had torn through his knee years ago, leaving him with chronic pain that flared up regularly. The clinic's famous old Chinese doctor, Dr. Hua, could only manage the pain temporarily with needles. Nothing ever lasted. Dr. Hua's granddaughter, a young female doctor named Xiaoting, was there too. When I offered to treat the village chief, she laughed in my face. Said her grandfather was the greatest living doctor in the region, that university graduates and city officials begged to study under him. And if he couldn't cure this condition, some village nobody certainly couldn't. I ignored her. I explained the chief's condition. Likely bacteria carried by the bullet had formed a biofilm, causing recurring inflammation. I treated dozens of cases like this with my Taoist master in my previous life. Same injury, same pattern, same cure. Then I mentioned Dr. Hua's prescription for Zhao Zhanshan. I told him the meat yellow vine catalyst was a good idea, but 2 of the herbs in his formula were unnecessary. Swap them for smoked angelica, and the results would be better. Dr. Hua's eyebrows shot up. That correction was right, and he knew it. Before anyone could stop me, I took 3 acupuncture needles and drove them into the chief's knee, channeling pure yang energy through each one. The chief's eyes went wide. Within minutes, I pulled the needles out and told him to walk. He stood up, took a step, then another. His face transformed from skepticism to pure shock. "It doesn't hurt," he whispered. "The pain is completely gone." Dr. Hua stared at me over his glasses. He asked who'd taught me. I told him an old Taoist in the mountains. He offered to take me as his disciple on the spot, said the offer would stand for as long as he lived. His granddaughter's jaw was on the floor. The young male doctor standing nearby was green with jealousy. He'd been begging Dr. Hua for 3 years to accept him as a student. I turned the old man down. I wasn't interested in being anyone's disciple again, but I did need needles. Dr. Hua reached into his drawer and pulled out not just the steel needles I'd asked for, but a set of silver acupuncture needles, his family heirloom set, 15 needles made with special techniques. Silver conducted pure yang energy far better than steel. With these, I could cut the chief's treatment from 3 months to 2. He gave them to me for free. His granddaughter nearly fainted. I thanked the old doctor, promised the chief I'd have him fully healed within 2 months, and headed to the government office. By 9 o'clock, the household split was done. My father's name was off grandfather's registration book. We were free. On the walk home, grandfather clutched his new, thinner household book and muttered threats. Behind him, Qing Shu was eyeing the food on my cart, hungry and hateful, but too afraid to try anything after watching me practice fist forms that morning. When we reached the Li compound, the entire household, grandmother, both aunts, the twins, everyone, was waiting at the gate with eager faces. "Where's the meat?" grandmother demanded. Qing Shu had to explain that grandfather had smashed a table and spent the meat money on repairs. The looks on their faces were devastating. Their last hope for tasting meat, gone because the old man couldn't control his temper. That's when I walked past them, carrying a paper bundle that was already filling the air with the rich smell of pork and dough. "Mom, Guixiang, come try these meat buns," I called out. The aroma drifted straight across into their nostrils. Every single member of that household stared as I handed fat, warm buns to my mother and my sister-in-law. I could see their throats working, swallowing nothing. I handed Guixiang a warm meat bun. She tried to give it back, said it was too expensive, that I should eat it myself since I needed strength for hunting. I pressed it into her hands and told her I'd already eaten at the market. This was for her and my mother. She bit into it, and I watched her eyes light up. She'd never tasted a meat bun in her life. Then I pulled out a bottle of yellow peach preserves, 8 mao a jar, and held it up to her lips. She nearly dropped the bun from shock. She'd only ever heard people talk about canned peaches. Never imagined she'd actually taste them. Across the yard, grandfather's entire household stood staring at us with eyes like starving wolves. They'd been counting on grandfather buying half a gene of pork today, but he'd wasted their 2 mouths smashing that breakfast table. Now they had nothing, and the smell of our food was drifting right into their faces. First uncle's wife cracked first. She burst into tears and started clawing at her husband's face, screaming about how useless he was. "Look at them eating meat buns and peach preserves. What have you ever given me?" Second uncle's wife erupted next, attacking her own husband while calling for her twin sons to help hold him down. The whole compound descended into chaos. Grandfather tried to break it up with his shoe, but his own sons turned on him, blaming him for wasting the meat money. Both uncles, both aunts, the twins, grandmother, everyone screaming, scratching, shoving. Neighbors came running from every direction, some to watch, some pretending to help. Meanwhile, Pockmark Annie showed up dragging her grandson, who plopped down in the dirt screaming that he wanted a meat bun. She walked right up to Guixiang and demanded one. I stepped in before Guixiang could answer. Told the old woman if she wanted a bun, she could send her daughter-in-law over to keep me company for 2 nights. That shut her up fast. We loaded everything onto the cart. Our few belongings, the supplies from the cooperative, and left the Lee family compound for the last time. Behind us, grandfather was shouting about how we'd be crawling back soon. Shu was bragging about his future factory job in the city, promising to buy grandfather meat buns every day. The neighbors all agreed we were doomed, spending money on buns and canned fruit. What reckless fools. Only one voice spoke up for us. A woman named Roshua, a widow raising her daughter alone. She quietly said it was our money to spend. The other women immediately turned on her, teasing that she must be lonely at night and looking for a man. She blushed and hurried away. We arrived at Zhao Gui's house. The door was locked from the inside. They hadn't moved out. Not a single thing packed, not a single step taken toward leaving. Zhao Gui was squatting in there like a toad, betting that I couldn't do anything about it. Kill him? Obviously not. So he figured he'd just stay forever. The whole village gathered to watch. This was prime entertainment. The deadbeat who'd bought a house he couldn't move into. Neighbors were already whispering that I was stuck between grandfather's house and a locked door, nowhere to go. Some were practically gleeful. My father's face went pale with worry. Gui Xiang touched my arm and said it didn't matter. She'd follow me anywhere, even to the old abandoned guard shacks at the village edge. Then grandfather and Qingshu strolled up from behind, grinning ear to ear. What's wrong, Qingshan? Locked out? Inside the house, Zhao Gui's wife was asking if this would really work. He told her they had nothing to lose. They were already at rock bottom. What was I going to do, murder them? I stood there looking at that locked door, listening to the whole village wait for me to fail. Every one of them expected me to crumble. They had no idea what was coming next. I kicked the door in. One shot. The bolt snapped clean off and the door swung wide open. The neighbors behind me gasped. Zhao Gui's face went white when he saw me walking into his courtyard like I owned the place. Which I did. Get out of my house, I said. He tried to play tough. Told his son to fight me. Bad decision. I beat both of them until they couldn't stand, then dragged them out the front door like dead dogs and tossed them in the dirt. Zhao Gui's wife came scrambling out after them, wailing and kneeling in the road, screaming about how cruel I was. The neighbors started clucking. He shouldn't use violence. They're neighbors. That's too much. I pulled out the land and property certificate, the one with my name on it, stamped by the township government. Held it up for everyone to see. This house is legally mine. The government approved the transfer. If you say I'm stealing Zhao Gui's house, you're saying the government helped me steal it. You're calling the government a criminal. Want to explain that to the Public Security Bureau? Dead silence. In this era, accusing the government of wrongdoing was the one thing nobody dared do. Every neighbor who'd been sympathizing with Zhao Gui suddenly switched sides. He's right. The house was sold fair and square. Zhao Gui, you're the one squatting illegally. How shameless can you be? Dazhuang and Erzwang threw all of Zhao Gui's belongings out into the road. Pots, bowls, chairs, blankets, everything piled in the dust. The family had no choice but to gather their things and shuffle off to the abandoned guard shacks at the village edge. Even then, they took it out on Naishan. Made her carry more than anyone else. Called her a broom star. Blamed her for every misfortune. Zhao Chang was already scheming to sell her off to some man for bride price, then gamble the money away. The sick thing was, Zhao Gui and his wife thought it was a great idea. Naishan overheard everything. I could imagine her face, those sad eyes filling with tears, that fragile hope I'd given her crumbling under the weight of her family's cruelty. She ended up in the smallest shack, the one originally built for guard dogs. 3 or 4 square meters. A dog kennel. We moved in and settled the rooms. I took the east-facing master bedroom. Purple energy from the east, best position. My parents got one room, Guixiang got another. Zhao Gui had built for 2 sons, so there was plenty of space for 4 of us. I knocked on Guixiang's door. She was tidying up her room, and the air smelled faintly of her, clean and feminine. I handed her 2 pairs of embroidered cloth shoes. The kind with flowers stitched on top, the kind only the village secretary's wife wore. Her eyes went wide and wet at the same time. These are for me. I knelt down and pulled the ugly hand-me-down shoes off her feet. Those shoes had been first aunt's cast-offs. The woman had taken Guixiang's original pair and given her these worn-out things instead. That kind of petty theft had been happening to Guixiang for years. Not anymore. She slipped on the new shoes. Perfect fit. She stared down at her own feet like she was seeing them for the first time, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. They're so pretty, she whispered. In my parents' room, I overheard something strange. My mother was saying to my father, his real parents' situation, should we tell him? My father sighed heavily. Not yet. Let's wait a little longer. My real parents? I filed that away. There was clearly something about my birth that I didn't know, even from my previous life. On my way out to visit Zhao Zhanshan, a woman's voice called to me from a narrow alley. It was Roshue, the widow who'd spoken up for me earlier. She was the only city-bred woman in the village, pale-skinned with refined features, raising a daughter alone after her husband died. Life had been brutal to her. The village women bullied her for being different, and she had no one to protect her. Now she was standing in the shadows with tear tracks on her face, holding a cracked bowl in both hands. She dropped to her knees in front of me. Qingshan, please, give me a bowl of meat. She paused, then said the words like they cost her everything she had left. I'll spend the night with you. Roshue, get up. What are you doing? I grabbed her arms and pulled her to her feet. The moment I touched her, I felt how thin she was, nothing but bone under loose sleeves. This woman had been starving for a long time. She collapsed against my chest, sobbing. Qingshan, please. My daughter Chow'er is dying. She's never had a single good day in her life. All she wants before she goes is one bowl of meat. I'll do anything. Whatever you want from me. I asked what was wrong with her daughter. She said the girl had fallen seriously ill and wasn't going to last much longer. She was fine not long ago. Wait here. I'm coming back, and then I'll go to your house with you. Her face flushed red. She thought I was planning to collect my payment at her home. She started worrying about how to keep things quiet so her daughter wouldn't notice. The poor woman had already made peace with selling herself for a bowl of meat. I went inside, filled her cracked bowl with meat, and stacked 3 or 4 wheat flour flatbreads on top. Not corn cakes, real wheat bread, the kind almost nobody in Stone Creek Village could afford. Even the village secretary's family didn't eat this well. She stared at the food and swallowed hard. She'd only asked for meat, and here I was giving her fine grain too. We walked to her house together. Inside, her daughter Chow'er was lying on the bed, lips white, barely breathing, looking like death was already sitting at the foot of her bed. This girl was only about 10 years old, but I knew her reputation. She was the kid boss of the whole village. Even 12-year-old boys were afraid of her. She'd inherited her mother's pale skin and pretty features, but with a fighter's spirit underneath. If she weren't sick, she'd be out leading her little army of village children into battle against the kids from neighboring villages. Mama, the girl whispered weakly, then closed her eyes. Roshua leaned close to me and whispered nervously, Qingshan, could you not do it in front of the child? She still thought I'd come here for her body. Roshua, your daughter was bitten by a snake, I said. Why didn't you take her to the clinic? Her face went blank with shock. What? A snake bite? She never told me. She just got a fever, so I bought some fever medicine from the township clinic. It didn't help. I took Chow'er's wrist and felt her pulse. Then I pulled off her sock. Sure enough, the bottom of her foot was swollen black, the venom already spreading through her blood vessels. Fortunately, it wasn't one of the truly deadly vipers like the Usheri pit viper. If it had been, this girl would have been dead days ago. If you take her to the clinic now, they won't be able to save her, I said. Roshua's face shattered. She started crying uncontrollably, blaming herself for being too poor to catch this sooner, for not having money to see a doctor when it mattered. Let me finish, I said. The clinic can't save her, but I can. 70% chance. In truth, I was being modest. Our tradition says even with complete confidence, you only claim 7 parts out of 10. This snake bite was nothing I couldn't handle. She grabbed onto my words like a drowning woman grabs a rope. You can really do this? You're not lying to me. Go outside. Come back in half an hour. She nodded, wiped her tears, and walked out. Before closing the door, she turned back. If you save my Chow'er, you just wait. I won't let you down. I pulled out the silver needles Dr. Hua had given me that morning. I inserted them into several key acupuncture points on the girl's body, channeling pure yang energy through each one. Then I lanced open the bite wound on her foot. Drop by drop, thick black poison blood began to flow out. An hour after I'd started, the black blood stopped dripping from Chow'er's foot. I pulled the silver needles out one by one, and the girl opened her eyes almost immediately. Brother Qingshan, she said, her voice weak but alive. I scolded her gently. She'd been bitten by a snake days ago and hadn't told her mother because she knew they had no money for a doctor. She'd rather die quietly than burden Roshua with another debt. 10 years old, and already carrying the weight of poverty on her small shoulders. I handed her the bowl of chicken and flatbread. Her eyes went wide as plates. So much meat? And real wheat bread? She couldn't believe it. I told her to eat everything and get her strength back. Roshua heard her daughter's voice and came bursting through the door, scooping Chower into her arms, crying so hard she could barely breathe. I stepped outside to give them a moment. A minute later, Roshua followed me out and closed her daughter's door behind her. Then she started unbuttoning her shirt. I caught her hands and stopped her. Roshua, you're the prettiest woman in this village. Half the bachelors can't sleep at night thinking about you. Every man here wants to be in your bed. And honestly, so do I. She froze, staring at me. But not for a bowl of meat. When the day comes that you actually want to be with me, not out of desperation, not as payment, then we'll talk. Until then, button your shirt back up. She stood there stunned, like nobody had ever turned her down before. Maybe nobody had. Maybe every man who'd offered to help her had demanded exactly what she'd just tried to give me. I turned to leave, but she called out again. Wait, come with me. I want to show you something. She led me to a small mud shed behind her house. Inside, she bent down and dragged out a wooden crate from under a pile of junk. She opened the lid. A gun, a single-barrel shotgun, sitting in that box like it had been waiting for me. My husband died because of this gun, she said quietly. Before he went, he told me to keep it safe. I've thought about selling it, but I'm just a woman with no connections. The gun has some kind of history, my husband never explained what. If I tried to sell it in this small community, word would get around, and whoever was looking for it might come after me and Chower. She looked me in the eye. You're a hunter using a bow. A hunter needs a gun. Take it if you want it. If not, it stays here collecting dust. I stared at that shotgun, and my heart was pounding. This changed everything. My bow was 60 pounds, fine for rabbits, pheasants, even road deer up close. But wild boar? The big ones with hide like armor? No chance. I'd been limited to small and medium game, walking past opportunities worth real money. This single-barrel shotgun could fire 2 types of ammunition. Buckshot for close-range bird hunting, useful but loud, and I could do the same work silently with my bow. But the slug rounds, those were what I really needed. A single slug could reach over 80 meters with killing accuracy, enough power to shatter a wild boar's skull. Next to the gun sat 4 or 5 slug rounds. Each one cost about 2 mao on the open market, and buckshot was 7 fun apiece. Expensive, but I didn't plan on missing. With this gun, the next time I went into the old forest, I wouldn't have to walk away from wild boar. One good shot at a 200-gene pig could bring in more money than a week of hunting rabbits. This was the tool I'd been waiting for, and it had come to me because I'd chosen not to take advantage of a desperate woman. Roshua, you're my lifesaver. This gun is worth serious money. Now I'm the one who owes you. I picked up the shotgun and turned it over in my hands. It was beautiful. A single-barrel hunting gun, well-maintained despite years in a box. Then Roshua said something I wasn't expecting. She told me she could see I was a good man, that she'd been lonely for years. She asked if she could come to my house tonight. No strings attached. If I found a wife later, she'd step aside without a word. Are you serious? I asked. She blushed crimson and practically ran out of the shed. Said to just take the gun and left to check on her daughter. That one speech had used up every drop of courage she had. For a woman in this era to say something like that, it was extraordinary. I looked at the sky. Still hours until dark. What a shame. I hid the gun in my room, then went straight to Zhao Zhanshan's house. Yesterday, I'd had no needles. Now I had Dr. Hua's silver set. Time to put them to work. Zhanshan and Shanxing both watched with disbelief as I inserted the needles into the old hunter's chest. Within minutes, the heaviness and pain he'd been carrying for months started to ease. His eyes went wide. The tightness. It's actually fading, he said, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I told him I'd come back every 2 weeks. I couldn't cure him outright, not until we found the 500-gene boar heart for the medicine. But I could keep the pain at bay and extend his life until then. He asked where I'd learned all this. Same answer as always. Old Taoist in the mountains. He shook his head in amazement. The village deadbeat had become a healer overnight. On my way out, Shanxing walked me to the gate. I could see something shifting behind her eyes. She was starting to take me seriously. I pulled a packet wrapped in oil paper from my shirt and handed it to her. She opened it, and her face lit up. Peach crisps, her favorite treat since childhood. You remembered? She said quietly, something fragile in her voice. How could I forget? You shared yours with me when your father saved my life. That was the first time I ever tasted anything good. I left her standing at the gate, holding her pastries, watching me walk away with an expression I couldn't quite read. A few steps down the road, I ran into village chief Li Shengli. I asked him straight out, could I take over as the village health worker? The old clinic had been empty since the last medic left. With my skills, I could treat the villagers and build something useful. He agreed on the spot, didn't even hesitate, said I was the most qualified person in the whole village and handed me the clinic keys right there. He also told me to be careful on my next hunting trip, said I was too valuable to lose on the mountain now. Keys in my pocket, gun in my room, silver needles in my bag. Things were coming together fast. I had a few more stops to make. First, bring some mung bean cakes and sticky rice strips to Naixiang. That poor woman was living in a dog kennel now, and I needed to check on her. Then wait for nightfall, when Roshue would come knocking. Tomorrow morning, I'd head back up the mountain with my new shotgun. This time, I wasn't just hunting rabbits. My mind was already racing with plans. New clothes for my mother and Guixiang. I'd spotted a nice dress at the cooperative that would look perfect on my sister-in-law. Renovate the house. Dig down to the underground palace. Apply for more housing plots. Buy hunting dogs. Build something real. But first, Naixiang. That woman had saved me in my last life. She'd given me her body and her last words before walking into the river. This time, I was going to pull her out of hell before it swallowed her again. I picked up the snacks and headed toward the edge of the village, where the guard shacks stood like forgotten graves. I was walking toward the guard shacks with snacks for Naixiang when I heard it, the crack of a palm hitting skin, followed by crying. I quickened my pace. Through the gaps between the shacks, I could see everything. Naixiang was curled up on the ground, while Zhao Chong kicked her and punched her like she was a sack of grain. His parents sat at their little table eating sweet potato porridge, watching like it was entertainment. A few villagers had stopped to look, but when Zhao Chong screamed at them to mind their own business, they backed off. After all, Naixiang was an outsider, not their problem. Here's what had led to this. Zhao Chong, that worthless gambling rat, had come up with a new scheme. There was a man in the village called Zhao the Blind, an old bachelor, maybe 3 years older than Zhao Gui himself. He'd lost an eye when he was young, and no woman would ever marry him. Decades alone had made him strange. He followed women around the village, grinning at them. He never bathed. His house smelled so bad the neighbors came over to curse at him daily. But a lifetime of saving with nobody to spend on mint, Zhao the Blind had money. Zhao Chong wanted to sell Naixiang to this man as a bride, pocket the dowry, and gamble it all away. When Naixiang heard their plan, she refused, begged them not to make her marry that man. Zhao Chong's response was to beat her. She'd stopped fighting back. I could see it in the way she lay there, not protecting herself anymore, not flinching. She'd made a decision. I recognized that terrible calm. In my last life, this was exactly how it happened. The beating, the hopelessness, and then one night, she'd walk to the deep river outside the village and let the water take her. She was already planning it. Tonight, probably. She'd decided her life wasn't worth living anymore. She'd grown up in a home where girls were worthless. Her brother beat her, and she wasn't allowed to hit back. She ate last, worked most, and got nothing in return. She'd thought marriage would be her escape. Instead, she'd become a widow on her wedding day, spent 3 years being called a curse. And now they wanted to sell her to a filthy old man so her brother-in-law could throw the money away at a gambling table. No more, she was thinking. The river is deep. It'll be quick. I stood there watching Zhao Chong's fists come down on her again and again, and something inside me snapped so hard I could almost hear it. My teeth were grinding together until they nearly cracked. I dropped the mung bean cakes and sticky rice strips and charged straight at him. I charged at Zhao Chong like a bull seeing red. Zhao Chong, I'll kill you, I roared. He spun around and saw me coming. His face went white. He'd felt my fists before and knew what was about to happen. He threw up his hands, stammering, "Don't hit me, don't hit me." Too late. My boot connected with his chest and launched him off his feet. 100-and-something gene of man went flying backward through the air and crashed into the dirt. The villagers watching couldn't believe what they'd just seen. Before he could even scream, I was on top of him, raining punches down like a summer storm. Help! Murder! Father, save me, he shrieked. Old Zhao Gui came running at me, grabbing my arm, yelling at me to stop beating his precious son. I turned on him. You old bastard, you dare touch me. One punch to his eye socket. Then another, and another. He went down howling, rolling in the dirt, begging for the village chief. Then the mother came charging in, claws out, figuring I wouldn't hit a woman. She figured wrong. I grabbed her wrist and slapped her across the face. She stared at me in shock. Nobody had ever done that to her before. So I slapped the other side. She mumbled something about how dare I hit a woman. I slapped her again. You call yourself a woman? I snarled. You sat there watching your gambling son beat his sister-in-law to death and did nothing. You're not a woman. You're an animal. I kept going until both her cheeks were purple and her mouth was bleeding. Her husband and son cowered behind her, not daring to step forward again. The one thing they were good at, bullying someone weaker, and now they were the weak ones. The villagers stood watching in silence. Nobody moved to help Zhao Chong's family. He'd just threatened to beat anyone who interfered, and now he was getting exactly what he deserved. Some of them were probably enjoying it. On the ground behind me, Naixiang was watching too. I could feel her eyes on my back. A minute ago, she'd been planning to drown herself tonight. Now she was seeing something she'd never seen before, someone fighting for her, not because they wanted something from her, but because they were genuinely angry about what was being done to her. I grabbed Zhao Chong by the collar and dragged him toward Naixiang. Apologized to her. Now he squirmed. Apologize to that broomstar? That'll ruin my luck. I slapped him so hard his head snapped sideways. Li Qingshan. Stop this right now. Village Chief Li Shengli came hurrying over. He'd heard the commotion from the village entrance. One look at Naixiang lying bruised on the ground told him everything he needed to know about what had started this. But he had to keep order. Zhao Gui scrambled behind the chief like a child hiding behind a teacher, pointing at me, wailing about attempted murder. The chief turned to me with hard eyes. What happened? Why are you fighting? I let go of Zhao Chong and stepped back. Gave the chief his face. He'd earned my respect, and I wasn't going to make him look weak in front of the village. Village chief, I said, this isn't my fault. Zhao Chong was beating Naixiang half to death because she refused to be sold off to Zhao the Blind as a bride. Her own family treating her like livestock. I walked up and saw her on the ground getting kicked, and I lost my temper. I looked at the three of them, bruised, bleeding, trembling. I'm only stopping because of you, village chief. Otherwise I wouldn't be done yet. I told the village chief everything. How Zhao Chong had been beating Naixiang because she refused to be sold off to Zhao the Blind as a wife. Li Shengli was furious. He turned on Zhao Chong and cursed him out. While the chief dealt with them, I went to Naixiang and lifted her off the ground. She weighed almost nothing, maybe 70 jin, skin and bones wrapped in bruises. I could have picked her up with one hand. A faint scent of something soft and feminine rose from her as I helped her to a chair. With my back to the crowd, I slipped a piece of mung bean cake into her mouth. She hadn't expected it. The sweetness hit her tongue, and I watched something change in her eyes, like a window opening in a dark room. A minute ago, she'd been planning to drown herself. Now she was tasting green bean cake and holding onto my wrist like she'd never let go. I took her small hand behind my back and held it in mine. She didn't pull away. Her fingers were trembling, but warm. Neither of us said a word about it. Nobody in the crowd noticed. Then Zhao Gui started spinning his lies for the chief. He claimed they were just trying to help Naixiang find a new husband because she was bad luck. Said Zhao Chong only gave her a little scare, nothing serious. Said I was the one who attacked them unprovoked. The villagers backed him up, not because they believed him, but because they hadn't seen the start of it. We only saw Zhao Chong hit Wang Naixiang. Then Li Qingshan hit everyone else. Hard to say who's right. Then Naixiang spoke up from behind me, her voice barely above a whisper. They wanted to make me marry Zhao the Blind. I refused, so they beat me. Zhao the Blind. Everyone in the village knew that man. He was older than Zhao Gui, a lifelong bachelor who'd lost an eye young and never found a wife. Decades of loneliness had twisted something inside him. He followed women around the village with a creepy grin. He never washed. His house reeked so badly that neighbors came to shout at him daily. Dogs crossed the street to avoid him. And Zhao Gui's plan was to sell Naixiang to this creature, pocket a fat dowry, and hand the money to his gambling son. The crowd's tone shifted instantly. Marry her off to Zhao the Blind? That's not human. A flower shoved into cow dung. These people are worse than animals. Zhao Gui tried to bluff his way through. She's my daughter-in-law. I decide who she marries. I stepped forward. You say she's a broom star. You say she killed your eldest son and cursed your family. You say you don't want her around. Fine, then let her split her household registration. Separate her from your family completely. From today on, she has nothing to do with you. His face changed immediately. No, she's our daughter-in-law. We can't let her leave the household. Of course not. Because if Naixiang left freely, there'd be no bride price. No money for his son to gamble away. He wanted to own her like property, worthless enough to abuse, valuable enough to sell. I pointed at the tiny shed where they'd made her sleep. The one built for guard dogs. 3 square meters of filth. Everyone, take a good look. This is where they put her. A dog kennel. Is that how you treat a human being? The neighbors craned their necks and muttered among themselves. Even the ones who'd been neutral started shaking their heads. I'd made up my mind. Today, I was taking Naixiang out of this family. I didn't care what Zhao Gui said, what the traditions demanded, or who tried to stop me. She could split her household registration and become independent. This was the new society. Personal freedom was the law. Even the government would back me on this. If she stayed with these people one more day, they'd beat her again. And next time, she might actually make it to the river. The villagers looked at the dog kennel where Naixiang had been sleeping, and their faces changed. Everyone knew these shacks, built years ago as lookout posts against bandits. 2 bigger ones for guards, 1 tiny one for the watchdog. And that's where these monsters had put their daughter-in-law. Even the people who'd been neutral started shaking their heads in disgust. Zhao Gui saw his sympathy slipping away, so he played his last card. He said Naixiang could leave for 50 yuan. That was his bride price calculation. They'd originally paid 20 jin of rice and 30 eggs for her. But if those eggs had hatched into chickens, and those chickens laid more eggs, he'd talked himself all the way up to 50 yuan. The crowd gasped at his shamelessness. 50 yuan could buy an entire house. Not one fun, I said. I'm taking Naixiang with me right now. You can split the household registration or not, I don't care. But if I ever see you lay a hand on her again, you'll answer to me. And if that's not enough, we'll take this to the Women's Federation in town. You know what they do to men who force women into marriages? They lock you up. The chief backed me up. Told Zhao Gui straight. Force Naixiang to remarry, and you're going to prison. The color drained from Zhao Gui's face. He looked at the chief like a dog that had just been kicked. I gathered up Naixiang's belongings, her thin blanket, her few pieces of clothing, and took her by the hand to leave. But the villagers started their gossip immediately. A young bachelor walking off with another man's widowed daughter-in-law? The stories would write themselves. Secret meetings in the rain, rolling around in the cornfields. They'd have a dozen versions by nightfall. Naixiang heard every word. She pulled her hand free from mine. Qingshan, stop. I can't go with you. Why not? You're not married yet. If I follow you home, your reputation is ruined. No decent girl will ever agree to marry you. I'm just a widow. My name is already mud. But you still have a future. I won't destroy it. She was standing there with bruises on her face, tears on her cheeks, worrying about my reputation. This woman who'd been beaten, starved, and shoved into a dog kennel was trying to protect me. I don't care about any of that, I said. Then I care for you. She wasn't budging. So I thought fast and pulled out the key to the village health clinic. Fine. You won't come to my house. Then go to the clinic. There's a room there you can sleep in. The chief just made me the village health worker, and I need an assistant. I'll teach you medicine, how to treat patients, how to handle drugs. In this era, learn enough and you could become a real doctor someday. They don't need diplomas right now. A barefoot doctor's handbook and some real skill, and you could even get sent to university. I pressed the key into her palm. This way she'd have a place to live, a reason to be there that had nothing to do with me personally, and a path toward independence. Nobody could say anything improper about a health worker staying at the clinic. Zhao Gui saw the key change hands and immediately tried to stir up trouble. He started shouting to the crowd. Look, the village chief gave this deadbeat the clinic keys. This fool is going to be our doctor? He'll kill us all. The villagers came swarming over the moment they heard Zhao Gui's accusation. They didn't care about a family squabble, but the village clinic? That affected everyone. Chief Li Shengli shut them down fast. He explained the whole process. I'd been nominated, but still needed township approval and 3 months of training at the county hospital before I could officially practice. He wasn't handing me a medical license on the spot. He was giving me keys to clean the place up and study the medical books inside. And as for Naishang staying there, she was a woman in crisis with nowhere to go. Helping a neighbor was basic human decency. That quieted the crowd for about 5 seconds. Then they found new complaints. Why him and not me? I could do that job. Since when does this deadbeat know anything? I picked up a stick and started writing names in the dirt. Zhao Gui's name. Li Dali's name. Li Daji. Xiaofan. Zhao San. One after another, clear and correct. The complainers went quiet. Most of them couldn't write their own names. I can read and write, I said. Can any of you? Silence. But I wasn't done proving myself. I walked straight up to Zhao Gui, grabbed his arm, and with one quick twist, popped his shoulder out of its socket. He screamed like a dying pig. There, I said, turning to the crowd. His arm is dislocated. Who among you can put it back? Nobody moved. Anyone? No. Then one man in the back shouted that maybe I was faking it. So I walked over and dislocated his arm too. He dropped to his knees howling. Still think it's fake? I asked. Dead silence. Nobody wanted to be next. I can take your arms apart, and I can put them back together. That's what I do. I grabbed the second man's arm and snapped it back into place. He wiggled his fingers, rotated his shoulder. Perfect. His eyes went wide. Then I fixed Zhao Gui's arm too. No point leaving a patient suffering, even if the patient was scum. The mood in the crowd shifted completely. People started murmuring with genuine surprise. The old clinic doctor couldn't even do bone setting. Where'd he learn that? Maybe this kid really does know medicine. I told them the truth, or my version of it. An old hermit in the mountains had taught me for years before leaving last winter. I knew bone setting, joint problems, headaches, rheumatism, all sorts of conditions. Once I got the clinic cleaned up, anyone could come see me. And since my appointment wasn't official yet, I wouldn't charge consultation fees, just the cost of medicine. I meant it. Winning over a village isn't just about strength. You need people to trust you, to feel like you're looking out for them. In the years ahead, there would be opportunities one couldn't grab alone. Building goodwill now meant having allies when it mattered. Naixiang stood behind me, clutching the clinic key in both hands, watching the whole scene unfold. For the first time since I'd known her, in this life or the last, she looked like someone who could see a future. The villagers flipped like a switch the moment I said I wouldn't charge consultation fees, just the cost of medicine. Suddenly, the same people who'd been calling me a deadbeat were patting my back and saying they'd always known I was destined for great things. That's how people work. Give them something free and you're their best friend. Zhao Gui was still on the ground with his dislocated arm, begging me to fix it. I told him to drag himself to the township clinic. After what his family did to Naixiang, he was lucky I didn't pop the other arm out too. He cursed my name as I walked away, swearing revenge. His son Zhao Chong was already scheming, said they'd go to the village party secretary, who was a Zhao family member, and get him to take their side against me. Let them try. I had bigger things to handle. I took Naixiang to the clinic. It was the only brick building in the whole village, used to belong to the local landlord before his property was seized. The front room was the examination area, with medicine cabinets still stocked with basics. Red mercury solution at 1 mao a bottle, sulfonamide powder packets for wound infections, aspirin at 2 fen a pill, berberine, licorice tablets. Nothing fancy, but enough for everyday village ailments. I need to stock up on some better supplies later, penicillin, glucose injections. As the clinic doctor, I had the authority to order those. There were 2 medical books on the shelf, dog-eared from the previous doctor's use. I flipped through them quickly. Nothing I didn't already know. The back of the clinic had a small courtyard fenced with bamboo, and behind that a living quarters, 1 main room, and a bedroom. Small but private. Naixiang would be safe here. The clinic sat near the village center with neighbors on both sides. If anything happened at night, one shout would bring people running. Naixiang had already tidied up the bedroom by the time I checked on her. She'd made the bed and swept the floor, moving on pure instinct even though her body was covered in bruises. The woman couldn't stop working even when she was falling apart. You'll eat at my house for now, I told her. I'm heading up the mountain again tomorrow and won't be back for a couple days. When I get back, I'll build you a cooking stove in the courtyard. Tonight, I'll send my mother and Gui Xiang over to stay with you so you won't be alone. She was standing in the doorway with sweat on her forehead, hair stuck to her cheeks, looking at me with those soft, grateful eyes. The late afternoon light caught her just right, the narrow waist, the curves she couldn't hide even in worn-out clothes, that gentle fragrance that seemed to fill the whole room. Shan, she said quietly, thank you for everything today. The room felt warmer than it should have. I had a lot to do before tomorrow. Send my mother and Guixiang to keep Naishang company. Prepare my gear, the new shotgun, my bow, arrows, supplies. And tonight, there was still the matter of Roshue's visit after dark. But before any of that, I needed to deal with Xiao Gui's family one more time. They thought today was the end of it. They were wrong. I had one more lesson to teach them before I left for the mountain, something that would keep them in line while I was gone.